Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show edition. You heard the intro music. That means I'm filling in for Dave Scott tonight as we get ready to prepare to have a fantastic show. We have Mike Forrest coming in, and he's going to be talking about alien carvings. And I looked into some of this stuff. It's pretty amazing, tying into our history as human beings. Right? It's really what it's all about, and it's very much needed in this space. It definitely is. Let me go ahead and take a look out there and see who we have with the metal positions tonight. Looks like we have Race Fan with the gold. We have Kitty Catty Whack with the silver. And the other one didn't come through, Race Fan, so we're just going to go ahead and award the bronze to Frankie B, or actually to Mothman. Thanks for coming on in, guys. Fantastic show we're going to have here tonight, and we are actually getting ready to start the podcast side of this, so I won't be able to say hi to everyone, but Rob Lamont Jr., Frankie B, Ethanol, Carol Mario, Necessary Dialogue, Lead the B, Galactic Disclosure Movement, Mel WD-40 getting us lubed up for the show, Tracy Winters, UFO Tim James, see if we can get down the list, Miss Catherine Jones, let's see, who else, Eternity Eternal, I see you, I missed you though, who else do we have? Jennifer's out there. Hi, Jennifer. We have Lars Jansen. We have Bella B. We have Ann Joanne. And we're getting ready to start the podcast side of this as we start a couple seconds late here. As we get ready to go, guys, welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show edition. Filling in for Dave Scott is me, myself, Mr. Rob G. We're going to have a fantastic show here tonight. We have Mike Forrest joining us talking about alien carvings for hours 1 and 2. Then we have Steve Stockton, Tells Untold Missing Person Mysteries for hour 3. And an appearance by UFO Tim James. Let's get ready to get the show going, guys. Let's go. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I am your host, Mr. Rob G, and tonight we're broadcasting on our terrestrial affiliates across North America, plus digitally on digital platforms all around the world. Don't forget, you can access our archives for absolutely free. YouTube.com/ at Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the SWR Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, you can rock out to the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bubba Fidal, and oh so much more. As I said, we're going to have a fantastic show here today as we talk about the alien carvings. What's the meaning? With our guest here, Mike Forrest. We're not going to waste any time. We're going to jump right on into the show and bring him up on stage. Hi, Mike. How are you this evening?
Hey, doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yes, definitely. So glad to have you here. And just to kind of start it all off, the alien carvings, awesome topic just for starters. And so glad that there's someone out there that's really trying to dig into what these things mean and how they tie into who we are today. Very important when we talk about disclosure and the overall conversation. So I'm sure we'll get into all that. But I would like to kind of start off with just finding out who you are, because, we all take different paths to get to this place where we have now met. So leaning into that, what kind of got you here? What path did you take to eventually get where we are now?
When I was real young, I started collecting rocks and crystals, minerals, stuff like that. My grandpa was a miner, so there was always, slabs of opal and agates and different things laying around the house, and so I kind of, became interested in that way, and I started going to gem shows and rock shows. And my wife, she cuts opals, and so essentially, one year, my buddy went down to the Tucson Gem Show, and he had found some carvings down there amongst other specimens that he brought back and wanted to show me. And so we're sitting at my table one day, and he shows me these opals and amethysts and stuff. Cool, and got a couple opals from him, and he was getting ready to leave, and he's like, "Oh yeah, check out these tablets." And kind of started looking at it, and it's got aliens and weird symbols on it, and I collected a lot of carvings, and the work on it was pretty nice. I mean, there was definitely a lot of detail, and there was a lot going on. And I asked him who was making them, and he told me that they're 10,000 years old, and that there was an archaeologist down there that had sold it to him. And trust me, bro, I said to him, like I laughed at him, honestly, and to the point where we kind of got into a sparring match. And he's like, "No, I seen the carbon dating, and there's actually a show on it and all this stuff on the History Channel." And I just couldn't believe that this wasn't something that was on our news. I just didn't believe it. And so I started to kind of research it in. We made a wager that I could prove it to be modern, and so I wagered in $5,000 and started to go out and buy a few of these things. I wanted to buy a few, really, just an excuse was all I was looking for, because I was kind of interested, and just it burned a spot in my mind of the work that was in these things. And so I bought a few of them and started to try to find out who was digging them up or who was making them, and got into Mexico and started adding people on Facebook of friends you may know. And it just started to spiral into an investigation, essentially, to where I vetted out over 30 different families in multiple cities down there. And started to see something that I still couldn't believe, but really had a lot more merit than what initially I had thought. And so that was, in the first couple of years, we didn't do too much. I made a website. I created aliencarvings.com and started posting on there, just pictures and stuff like that I was being sent from these people down there, and just art that I couldn't quite wrap my head around. And after doing that for a while, people started saying, "Oh, that's fake or that's staged." And, we really wanted to get down to the facts. And whether you've got carbon dates or not, there's things that can be, fraudulently done. So you need more science than just a single date off of a single piece. There needs to be petroglyphs or rock formations, megalithic stones, something there more that we can see that this same has the same writing on it, that sort of stuff, and nothing like that had come out. And inevitably there was a gentleman in Tula Hidalgo, which is like north of Mexico City there, and that's where those statues stand on top of that flat pyramid with they're called the Atlantean statues, of all things. No relation to Atlantis, supposedly, but very interesting that it would have this specific name. Nonetheless, though, we had a report from there that there were some pieces that had come out of the ground that were glass. And I was looking at these things because I just didn't really believe that they were creating glass at this time period. And it seemed like something I'd be able to have looked at with a gemologist and see, break it down what was in it, see if it was modern or not that way. And so that this glass little episode turned into a big research match that inevitably had me pointing the finger at these guys of creating fraudulent pieces, and that's where it had gotten to. And I called this guy out on my Instagram page, and he got really upset and he took it very offensively. He went and rented a bunch of GPR equipment and ground penetrating radar, and at that point, there was already land that had been excavated to a degree. There's a documentary out from Gen 6 Productions called Gen 6 Expeditions, and it's a company that's owned by Steve Quayle. And he goes down there, and it's like a 4-hour documentary. They get really deep. They go down to the 16-foot level and find the ground floor down there. Unfortunately, they don't have time to break it all down and excavate it properly because this is a serious task at that depth. And you start handing up boulders and stuff, and it's taking buckets. And you can imagine with no equipment whatsoever, no heavy equipment, it would be a process. And so, nonetheless, they buried that hole, and this was right around the end of 21. And then at the end of 22, that's when we had our little feud there, and I called them out. And so, by the beginning of 23, they had dug back to where they were there. They had prospected the entire piece of land, which the land there in Tula Hidalgo is owned by a farmer that this specific place is that I'm speaking of right now, and it's been in their family for 200 plus years. It's a corn farm, and when they would till their fields, they would find things, and so that's where the Gen 6 documentary came in there. They scouted out quite a bit of the property for with the GPRs and ground penetrating radars and that sort of thing. And inevitably, when they went back down after our sparring match, that's when they found the triple ground floors, and it opened up and completely collapsed on them and opened up into a cave there was a statue of an alien sitting inside of it. And I mean, it took them months of work dusting and pushing this thing back. Multiple pieces came out of there, all documented. And inevitably, there's petroglyphs that started to show up on the walls and things as they got it all dug out. And I mean, I'm talking, same stuff that we're seeing on these carvings. And this is at such a level, and it's things in there that are a resemblance to the Anunnaki and Sumerian and Egyptian beliefs, or what they have on their tombs and things of that nature, with the different stars and bird-headed beings and that sort of thing. So it was really a shocker to see that, and that was kind of the nail in the coffin that instigated me to write the books that I have and document this with more professional effort, because right now, trying to get this into a limelight of things, it's a really tricky subject. Like you mentioned earlier, with disclosure, it kind of goes hand in hand, and that's what I'm learning, is that this is disclosure, and that's why it's something that's really hard to get in the limelight, because even with these congressional hearings and the amount of proof that we have with these videos and eyewitnesses coming forward that are highly ranked people who are respected, that have all the things that you would want to see, and still it's definitely not on the 60 Minutes or the 10 o'clock news.
Definitely. And you talked for a moment there about reaching that ground floor, like the original ground floor. And I thought that was amazing, because I checked out your YouTube channel, which, by the way, Mike has a YouTube channel, which is Aliencarvings, right?
Yep.
Okay. Aliencarvings. You guys make sure you go check that out. Go hit the like, subscribe over there as well. But it just, when excavating sites, and it seems to be the case everywhere they do this around the world, it seems like you have to go 10, 15 feet down from the surface, the current day surface. And now let me ask you, maybe you have the answer to this or not. When you're doing that, where does this dirt come from? Is this just dirt blown through the region, or how does it accumulate like that?
That's a super good question, and obviously we have a major die off in this 10 to 12,000 years that the younger Dryas, speculations that something major happened there. We also see it that like pyramids that have been found, like Chichen Itza and Teotihuacan, these pyramids were completely covered in dirt when they were found. And this is a heavy volcanic region of Mexico. There is volcanoes all the way around this area. So it could have been a large volcanic blast, kind of like Pompeii did to Mount Vesuvius did to Pompeii.
Mhm.
And that's part of the thing too, is when we find a lot of these pieces, they're trapped in like what looks to be like a mud or a silty substance. And so it could be something too that happened in the water, like there was a large tidal wave or something that came inland. I mean, we're pretty deep inland at this point, but it's not further than it could be if something really crazy happened, like a flood that the whole world talked about. And that's an interesting concept, because there's quarried stone blocks literally above this ground floor in this cave that are positioned in a way that you would have to have it held by a crane and like start filling in around it to get it to hold up
Yeah.
on its one corner. And so the fact it's sitting like that, and it's 20 tons, that tells me that something pretty major moved a lot of ground, really really aggressively. And in a lot of these funerary things that are being found, like they were digging a septic tank and they were down about 4 feet or so, and all of a sudden it completely collapsed in, and they were basically now on top of a burial. And they found the canoptic jars that you would find in a tomb in Egypt. They found a lot of different, what looked to be like a cult type ritual devices, different pendulums and ankhs and that sort of thing. Um, but what's interesting there is you have everything in this room. There's all these pieces and things that have been pushed, like it was almost like it was pushed by a wave to the back corner of this room. And it's the mud and everything, the way it's shown. It's actually on one of our documentaries there, on our YouTube channel, but you can see how it's just literally like something came in like a big wave.
So that there then leans into a lot of the historical religious claims of floods and great floods and waves and things of that nature, which obviously with all the water that we have on this planet, it makes sense that an event like that could take place. What it
Yeah.
also kind of leans into and makes me think about, because of that fact, is we have these designated ancient sites around the globe. Is there in your mind maybe an idea that we could find things like this everywhere we walk on this planet?
I would almost guarantee it. In fact, I think we already have. There's pyramids now in Bosnia, and I think Cambodia, if I recall, and China, and even lined up in similar fashions to what you would find there in Mexico and in Egypt. The fact we find these pyramids in Mexico and Egypt on each side of the world already is a very interesting revelation. That the fact that these two civilizations would come up with this concept together like this, for what purpose? And I mean, it's just it's interesting at the minimum, especially when you look at Egypt, and the earliest pyramid is a stepped pyramid there in Saqqara. So um, it definitely makes me wonder, if there was connection. And when people say, how is that possible that these are connected? You can also look into the ancient Sumerian texts, and you'll find writings about Thoth and Enki. After these wars, that they migrated in this direction, and so it's possible that they created new experimental areas or different types of things at some point. Or I have no idea. There's so much speculation regarding this because of the time frame and the carbon dates and stuff like that we're getting. Some of the carbon dates are 10,000 years, and all the way to 19,000 years. But then we have ceramic pieces as well that are made in the same style of these pieces, and they're in the 1 to 2,000 year old range. And so you have this large time span in Mesoamerica, and it's not just with these pieces, but you look down in Peru with the Nazca mummies. And you're also going to find carbon dates that are 17, 1800 years old with these mummies. And we've actually found bodies that are dehydrated, not of that same species with three fingers, but of a whole nother species in Guerrero, Mexico. And also we have depictions that have been found in one of the caves of the three-finger Nazca mummy. And it's, I mean, it's even got a metal plate carved into the limestone.
Very interesting. Because I've been one as far as those mummies go, and I actually was gonna we'll talk more about Nazca later, but yeah, it was something that was just immediately dismissed by the general public and even the UFO community, and it was just something where I said, okay, if you're seeing something that you've never seen, something you're seeing for the first time, there isn't anything to reference that against. So why would
Yeah,
it be something you would immediately throw out? So
right.
that's a whole nother thing there, but yeah, it was
Suspicious.
suspicious at best. Now I was asking about the whole dirt shifting thing because yeah, as you just stated, you have examples of writings or structures that are in South America that you find all the way across the globe. And it just seems more likely than to have two areas separated by so much distance to have maybe some more intermediary pieces that maybe we haven't picked up or discovered yet, right? Like some things we haven't had a chance to excavate yet. And I think
Big
about
time.
America here, like the North America, we found certain things, petroglyphs and things of that nature. But I just wonder if we were to dig 15, 20, 30 feet down, would we begin to find structures where we walk here in California, for instance?
Yeah. They found some archaeological pieces that were 10,000 years old in Idaho from digging a well, and it was down around 100 feet. And you know, you look at North America and some of the cataclysm type stuff that happened in the Washington Columbia Basin area, and also just North America it has a lot of potential of this because Mexico used to be a lot of North America all the way up into Utah and that sort of thing. So you know, you'll find petroglyphs in Utah that literally match what are on these pieces, like the Pedernal blade and things of that nature, sacrificial type items. And they go hand in hand between multiple cultures down in Mexico too, which is kind of an interesting thing. Is there's certain beliefs and systems that these people followed, but then there's also things like the feathered serpent that goes between the Aztecs and the Mayans, for instance, and I believe the Incan as well. And so the fact that they all have this figure is something of relevance as well, because we're seeing a lot of that in these pieces too, with the feathered serpent and certain Mayan influences. The Aztec calendar as well, or the Mayan calendar. I mean, both of them actually. Yeah.
So what were some of you talk about carbon dating as well, and I'm not any super specialist in carbon dating, but have you found in your studies that sometimes carbon dating doesn't line up with the actual physical evidence that you excavate?
Yeah, big time. Because there's a lot of variables that go into getting this date, and often it has to be taken from an organic sample. So first of all, that organic sample has to be preserved in a way that it still can be, tested for carbon. And that's not always the case in bones and certain things. So obviously, if it's been petrified just right, that's how they're able to get these dates on dinosaurs. But that's not always the case when they find the bones. Sometimes they can't get dates out of them. There's also variables. So like these pieces, a lot of them have like eyes and certain inlays that are put into the stone. They used an adhesive, actually different types of adhesives to put these things onto the stone. And there's organic material often in the adhesive. So you're able to date that. You're also able to break it down and see, modern adhesives have petroleum compounds and things of that nature in there that are able to be seen with different types of X-ray scans and infrared scans. And so you're able to dissect it down. And so the organic material, however, could be a ground up woolly mammoth tusk that's 10,000 years old. And if they use that in their glue along with or something else like um, some copal resin that had dried into the ground and had preserved there, and then they were to use that as part of their agent, then it could show false flags or false ages. And that's why it's important to have things in triplicate and have other forms of testing. So we have these caves. We're going to be able to do a thermoluminescence test on all three of the caves that we found. And that's going to be done by a geologist and archaeologist that I'm arranging a trip for right now, trying to figure out when that is. And it's going to be as soon as we can all get down there at the same time. But nonetheless, we're going to test and black out the caves essentially and dig down into the soil and take samples. And that quartz in there will show when it was last exposed to ultraviolet light. And we're going to be able to take multiple samples from each cave and compare them between the three. And if we get consistent dates, coupled with the carbon dates, coupled with the ceramics, and you know, then now we're in business, I think, for having something that would be pretty hard to deny.
Yeah, yeah. And some of these stories that are out there when we talk about the Anunnaki, Sumerians, and it kind of conflicts with what we have already accepted as humanity's history. So, as you have studied this, and what things have you come across? Maybe some of the earliest things that you in your research have come across that kind of told you that maybe that wasn't the whole story that we get in these books.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, there was a couple of things that really stuck out. There was, obviously we have the biblical canon, and then we have books like the Book of Enoch. And reading the Book of Enoch and then looking at some of these pieces, it definitely has some weird revelations and things that connect that would be you know important to put in there. There's a lot of things in the ancient texts. You look at like the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is a Sumerian epic, and one of the oldest stories. It has a flood story in there. It's not exactly like the Noah story. However, if you look at the Book of Giants, which is something that they found fragments of with the Dead Sea Scrolls, and have been able to confirm a lot of the words and a lot of the wording, and there's other copies that are more modern, but nonetheless, there's definitely an antiquity about this Book of Giants, and it lists Gilgamesh by name. So, and Gilgamesh is a half Anunnaki, it's like a Nephilim essentially, and so, but he's like 2/3 or something of that nature, a little bit more Anunnaki than human. So, yeah, it's really interesting to see some of those correlations, and definitely, there's been a lot of wars fought over religion. That's a given, and that's a big red flag to me, saying that there's something that's being argued about. And when I used to ask my teachers and my parents when I was a kid, like, hey, why are we fighting these people, or why are these people fighting? And the answers would be, oh, it's over religion, but there would never be oh, these people believe in this and they don't agree with this. It wasn't really so simple. And I think that's part of the issue, is there's more to this story than what's being talked about.
And that's a good place to stop there, Mike. Great stuff so far as we get ready to go into our first break of the night, right here on the Spaced Out Radio After Hours Radio Show edition, filling in for Dave Scott tonight. You guys don't go anywhere. Make sure you stay where you're at. We'll be right back. All right, we are clear. We are clear. So we have a 5-minute break right now. We're still on camera. They all can hear us right now. You can, if you needed to, you can take off and do something real quick. I'm just going to go ahead and go through the audience and welcome other people that I forgot earlier. So let me
Sounds
see.
good to me.
We got Sandra Kincaid in the building. Hi, Sandra. Thanks for coming in. Fast Timmy, didn't get to you earlier. Ethanol. Let's see. Carl Bittner, Human Carl. Thanks for coming on in. Thanks for showing up. Let's see here. Flat Six. Flat Six is here. Hi, Flat Six. Thanks for coming. Tokeland 9. Thanks for showing up. J Truth Seeker. Thanks for coming in. FAP. Thanks for showing up. Dragonfly. Hi, Dragonfly. Thanks for coming in. Blue Pac-Man 13 saying sup, Rob G. Sup, Blue Pac-Man 13. Thanks for coming on in. Let's see. I did tag one of your questions too, guys. So kind of try to save those for hour 2 so I can just keep a lookout for those. But if you do submit them, I'll try to catch them early as well. Paramar, thanks for coming in. Michael Gutierrez, thanks for showing up. Let's see, who else do we have? Digger Dog showed up. Hi, Digger Dog. Thanks for coming in. Woo Riders DG, can you dig it? That's what I'm talking about. Everybody, if you've been to Social Dig, you know exactly what he's talking about. Thanks for coming in, DG. Let's see. Hillbilly Herb. Algaray. Hey, Algaray. Algaray over from Twitch said, don't forget to follow on Twitch too. That's correct. Social media platforms, X and Twitch. We are broadcasting live there. LinkedIn too, I think. If they have a like option, please hit that like and hit the like tonight on YouTube as well. Let's get them up over 100 if we can, guys. I'm Hardcore joining us from X. Awesome topic. That is correct. Very important topic as well. And you got to shout out the researchers playing a big part, guys. Who else do we have? Tucson Mufon said Tucson Gym Show. Yes, that's what he said. He did say that. Thanks for coming on in. Caged on the inside. Yes, we will. I'll tag that question and we can get that answer for you. Definitely. Let's see. Matt Gutka. Hi, Matt Gutka. Thanks for coming in. Jeremy Jones. Thanks for showing up. Marty Burbach. Let's see. The Andromedan. Aaron Elizabeth, thanks for coming on in. And we are close to current. Free Paul DeMond, thanks for showing up tonight. Bomber, hi Bomber. All the way from the land down under. Thanks for coming on in. JMJ12, hi JMJ12. Hello, Thirsty. Old Gaffer has the right idea. Don't forget to hit the like, good people. Don't forget, please don't forget. We're on a break right now. Just take a moment, go out of the show or click the screen. Hit the little thumbs up button. We'd appreciate it. Let's see. SJ. Hi, SJ. Thanks for coming in tonight. Richard Minnick. Hey, Richard Minnick. Shelly Montgomery. Hey, Shelly. Let's see. Flubber Lane. Hi, Flubber Lane. Arway Man. Hi, Arway Man. Thanks for coming in. We are getting close here. Thanks for the super chat, Richard Minnick. Alien artifacts kick ass. It's true. It's true. They really do. Let's see. Okay. All right. We're looking good. Like number 48. That was at 9:33. Whoa. That was a minute ago. Come on, guys. Let's pump them up. Way too many people in here if it only be a like 48. Let's go on and hit them things up. If you wouldn't mind, we'd appreciate you. Blue Cruise, thanks for showing up tonight as well. As we get ready to get back into the show here, we got about 45 seconds. Oh, good. This is great information here. We have Tucson Mufon. It's Karen Hill out there. She's been to the gym show. She says, I personally gave one of Mike's alien carving books to George Norrie. I wish I got a picture of George holding it. So awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Great. That is awesome. The audience is awesome, man. I'm telling you, Mike, they really are. We got about 15 seconds left before we get back into the convo. All right, 5 seconds. Broken Shadow Feather, I see you. Hello, thanks for coming. Here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. We're still in the first hour. So we're with our guest here, Mike Forrest. We're talking alien carvings, just ancient civilizations and how it connects to who we are today. So very important. Remember, if you miss any of what we've talked about so far, hop in the archives. They're absolutely free. YouTube.com/@SpacedOutRadio. We go ahead and get ready to jump back in the conversation with Mike here. And Mike, there's, when we talk about alien civilizations, there are, especially like with the Anunnakis, and there's a group of people who claim to know the whole story, and they talk to you as matter of fact, when we have researchers like yourself that are out there finding things new every day. So you can't know the whole story. So with that being said, you come across as like someone that's inquisitive and really a person that's searching for the answers. What really drives that passion? Like, what drives that?
It's something I really have just dug deep for. I think I had a lot of friction with God and spirituality as a kid. When I found out Santa Claus was not real and that everybody lied to me, everybody. That was the people at the restaurant, my parents, my grandparents. I mean, I was let down at this point that they let me believe in this spiritual being that was watching when I was sleeping and then pulled the rug on me like that. I mean, it felt like a meme coin for me as a person, and I don't know if that really is what possessed me to dive deep on this. I guess more so I was skeptical and really thought I could disprove it, and it turned into it turned into something a lot more. It actually got me a lot closer to. Believing in that there was more out of this, more than what we're seeing here in this dimension of time, yeah, it's really now at this point, if I didn't pursue this, I would be letting down possibly a lot of people because this information is extremely relevant to our origin and our species of who and why and what we're doing here. And without that knowledge, a lot of people get depressed and a lot of people don't know what to believe. And with the amount of disinformation in this world, excuse me, misinformation in this world, it's definitely something that we need things like this to have a rock and a foundation somewhere. And so seeing this and then seeing a lot of these things start to connect on the world level between cultures, between the Dogon people and the Anunnaki and the Egyptians and the Mayans and that, seeing all this and, oh, this could be where the Mayan got all their astrological information. And this might be what's, in relation to the solstices all over the world and these megalithic sites. And there's definitely more to the story. And so that, I guess, is intriguing too. I really I want to know the story.
What out of some of the things that you have personally come across, when you compare those things to some of the stories that have been told, the in comparison to like the Anunnaki and some of the older things that are outside of the box, what has which one of those stories would you say has been shored up by some of the things that you have discovered in your research?
Well, what I'm finding is that anything that has it seems like there's truth in everything, I should say. There's some truth in any of these things that people believe in. I believe there's truth in them, but I also think because there's man's word and man's involvement, and we're in a state of duality. No one's perfect, right? So we all have this conscience, and we all have the ability to make choices and do good or bad. And I think that's really something that has to be taken, with a serious consideration, that these stories and these things that are written down have gone through man's altering. So to believe it completely blindly and not take any of the others into consideration, I think is also something that's scary. And some religions call for that, and maybe that's okay. But at the same point, to have that blind of faith is it's interesting. And I think, by reading a lot of these stories, like the Greeks and the Titans and the Anunnaki, all of these seem to be like the lesser gods, the lowercase g's. And so to really get on the one-on-one with God, I think we have to go above all these stories to some extent. Now, like I said, there's truth in all of them. So there's really important lessons and value to everything out there. I mean, I found certain things that I agree with in the strangest places on this because of the things that I'm seeing on these pieces. So it really has opened my eyes, especially in the Native American and that sort of thing is really just been an eye opener.
And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's kind of what I wanted to get into, like how, with your research. And I've always said this, that the natives are definitely the ones that we should fact check with, like a lot of the things coming across. How do you feel about that? And have you done that during, included in your research?
110%. And I think that's really important to fact check with everybody. I mean, it doesn't matter where you're from. If you've got a story that's passed down in tradition, there's probably value in that. And but with the natives specifically, there's some interesting sites that are native sites. A lot of these things, there's a whistleblower interview with Jesse Michaels here that just came out recently with the helicopter retrieval pilot, and he had mentioned some of these things about. Um, about this specifically with these native sites being hotspots for UFOs and doing research and that sort of thing. So I think there's definitely more to that story. Also, you look at the suppression that has gone into the Native Americans, and I say that obviously we have a lot of violence and things, but I'm talking about like their dances were federally banned by the United States government, federally banned on a tribal level to do the sun dance from like 1870 to excuse me from yeah, it was like 1860 or 1880 to 1970, I believe is what it was, just under 100 years. But I mean that's to go into that level of dictation, I guess you could call it. There has to be a purpose or a reason that these dances are providing a frequency or some sort of energy that has to be dealt with. I guess I don't even know.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And then, I mean, a modern day example of that is the authorities knowing, or the powers that be knowing, that human beings have abilities like potentially remote viewing, and then
Yeah,
kind of suppressing that from the rest of the public. Like, there are superpowers that we have, literally superpowers that they are suppressing. And that just lines up with more of that. And so that actually leads me into another question, because do you feel like there have been examples of ancient alien tech that have been maybe discovered by government groups that have been kept away from the general public, like
big.
examples of something really outrageous?
Yeah. Yeah, I think on multiple fronts, but a couple of the big ones would be obviously in Iraq. We went to Iraq. There was a tomb of Gilgamesh, of all people. This Gilgamesh comes up again, and supposedly there was an Anunnaki body found and certain things there, and Saddam Hussein was revitalizing one of the ziggurats specifically. And so weapons of mass destruction is the reason we went in there. And we obviously didn't find chemical weapons or nuclear bombs or anything that we could report to the news. But what if it was an ancient weapon of mass destruction that they had found or that people had found? And that's what we went in there to get control of. It's kind of like Nikola Tesla's work also. He discovered wireless energy essentially, and his research is, I mean, not even disclosable in the Freedom of Information Act. There's no talk about, Trump disclosing his files, like there's something in there that could probably potentially hurt us all, I think. And that's logical to me is why. But you have to think about what he was doing with these Wardenclyffe towers, and you look at the pyramids around the world, and a lot of these pyramids, especially the Great Pyramid, there's a lot of quartz. They coated them in limestone, which has a lot of quartz in it also. And you got to wonder, if you take a triangle and make a pyramid with quartz rods, and you hit it with a mallet, I mean, it makes one of the most beautiful sounds you've ever heard. It sits there and resonates for some time. And so in my mind, I think of the Great Pyramid being like one of these bells of some form where it resonates this energy out, kind of like a Wardenclyffe tower, to where, maybe that's where these ancient talks of magic and alchemy originated. Is there might have been people who utilized these megalithic structures to be able to have access to power in the air.
Yeah, yeah, it goes deep. I mean, and then when you think about it, the cover up goes deep, right? Because we just talk about modern day UFO cover up, but then we actually have examples of cover up going just millennia essentially. And for whatever reason, they're trying to hide the fact that hide our history for one, and then just what we truly are, right? So, in your
Yep.
mind, I know you don't have the answers to this, but based on theories and things that you've come across, physical artifacts, what do you think happened? Like, what do you think? How did we start this thing? Like, how, what would be your thought on that?
Well, so if you take the Anunnaki, for instance, and they believe that they were created by this primordial dragon. And you hear the dragon in heaven as well when Michael pushes the red dragon from heaven. He had to have God's permission to do this, and the red dragon was the closest to Michael in power, or equal to Michael in power, and they were the closest to God in power. And so you have a lesser God, but a very powerful one getting pushed out of heaven. And what's interesting about us, and there's certain things in the Bible that talks about the heaven and the earth used to be one, and at some point it shook and they were severed. And that's an interesting concept, especially with what you have here in terms of these beings. If for instance Michael pushed out Satan, this red dragon, maybe that push was the Big Bang that we see, and maybe that's why the James Webb Telescope is allowing us to now see beyond that, because there is something before the creation of our universe. There's a text by J.J. Hurtak called The Book of Knowledge, The Keys of Enoch, and inside of there it talks a lot about these type of things. And it's quite interesting to think about it. It talks that we live in what's called a sun universe, SON. And so it's like you have these sons of God in the Bible in Genesis that had their way with the woman of man. And on a lot of these pieces, you see genetic manipulation done by these bird beings, Thoth and Anubis, and the Anunnaki. And you see these little gray aliens like helping them and assisting them, like lab technicians in the lab. And there's literally surgical scenes and that sort of thing, with body parts being intersected. And obviously the Sumerians had a lot of hybridization as well, with scorpions with man that protected Ishtar, and there's the Lamassu, which is kind of like a cow slash man, and they built these massive statues, and that all respected to royalty. I saw someone talk about the land of Kem in chat here, and Kemet, I think, is also something that needs to be talked about here in Egypt, because in Kemet, the pharaohs. I don't know if you've seen I'm sure you have, but if you've paid attention to that, there's a beard on King Tut's death mask, and there's beards on certain Egyptian pharaohs and that sort of thing, and they're strapped on with a chin strap.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of interesting why they would have a 15-year-old boy, Pharaoh, that had to have this beard, unless they were trying to, make him seem older. But I looked into this beard, and it actually is to give homage to their creators in Kemet. And so the creators in Kemet, it's kind of an interesting thing. If you look into something called the B'nai Elohim, they were like the sons of. They wasn't the sons of God, but they were the sons of heaven, that orchestrated and managed the light from the creator's eye. And it talks about the creator's eye, or this emanation of direct light thought traveling into the eye of Horus. And you see the pyramid and the eye of Horus being worshipped in Egypt on a pretty major level. And that's something that we see on all these pieces. And it's also something that, you've probably seen that famous clip of Jim Carrey putting the triangle up to his face on some Tonight Show and saying it's the Illuminati. And you see this triangle with this eye on our money. The Freemasons have a great thing to do with it as well. And so there's obviously great history and great importance with this eye. And so I think that could very well have a real connection in this.
Yeah. And it seems, I talked recently. I had the rabbi Ariel Masul. I forget his name, but he's with the Raelian movement. And when I was talking to him, we were just talking about how their movement and what they believed with the Elohim was very similar to the Anunnaki. And like you said earlier, seems like some of these, like when you line up all the stories around the world, there are a lot of similar elements to the stories talking about origin. One thing that I have always wondered was, I've always believed potentially that there definitely is some sort of tech out there that some of these civilizations reach an advanced level where they were doing things that we do today. We still can't figure out a lot of the things that they did or how they did it. What do you think happens to these civilizations? Like, do you think that what we're living in now, as far as we've reached this AI super high level of technical achievement, and we're literally on the brink of destroying ourselves? Do you think that that played out in previous civilizations, or what do you think happened to those individuals?
Yeah, I think if we're dealing with creator beings or lesser gods that have the ability to manifest things on this planet, or that did have that ability before. It talks about divine intervention in the Bible. That's kind of what goes from the Old Testament to the New Testament, and this transfiguration of Christ and him dying and disappearing for a few days. There's a text called the Pistis Sophia, and it really gives a lot of this conclusion that he had come back after. And one thing I didn't understand was is that when he came back, it wasn't as a man, it was as like a more cosmic being that he had manifested into after dying. And the dying, I always wondered, why would God let his son die? Like, it just didn't make sense to me. But when you look at it in terms of he put his soul, a divine soul, into a human, now all of a sudden we have this upgraded being. You're no longer an emanation of light or a human. You're now both, and I think that's kind of what this thing came from. So now, what this has to do with the lost civilizations is after that occurred, obviously there's this talk of this flood and getting rid of all this corrupt beings or entities. And I think they had done a lot of DNA things that they'd created monsters and problems and serious things that were just wreaking havoc on this planet. So that had to be done away with. And so there's likely orchestrations, or it talks about like the order of Melchizedek in the Bible, which is something that was around before Jesus, and something prepared Abraham and all of these people for the coming. There was orchestration that occurred. And if you look at what the Genesis is, it says generations of Isis is what it breaks down to. Isis is kind of an interesting name. It goes kind of hand in hand with Mary, and Mary and Isis both mean like divine servants, or queen, not queens, but there's a specific word for it, but maidens of heaven or something of this nature. And so I feel that likely they have the power to reshape and not some of these civilizations may have been part of Earth, but Earth may have been terraformed down. Like, we may only be on a fragment of what's left of Earth. We could have been part of Tiamat. Some people speculate that, which was a planet that might have been destroyed to create the asteroid belt. So our Earth, or our Earth and the Moon, might have just been reorganizations because they had to delete that civilization. And so some of these Stone Age monuments that we have, especially when you go down deeper into their foundations, people are like, we have no idea how old this is, because this goes beyond what type of technology they should have had at that time. And so I think that's where we're starting to find that some of these like special locations on the earth are prominent places that maybe have existed even before. And that's where the fossil record and some of these things kind of just disappearing off of the earth may have come about, and why it's so choppy in the fossil record.
Do you think? I mean, and before I say this, I looked at examples like the Quran specifically, because there was someone I was watching that had pointed out that a phrase being interpreted would have two different meanings by just the an asterisk being there or not. Like, a particular little symbol makes all the difference in the world. Therefore, a totally different interpretation of what's being said. Have you run across any examples of things like that? And then if so, like, what would they have been?
The biggest one is the gematria in the Hebrew language, which essentially has a lot of number values associated with certain patterns and things. So, translating Hebrew, like for the original Hebrew text into the Bible, there's a lot of real question there, because you can't translate gematria very easily into it. There's extra levels of the language. Those fire letters that they use in that language are very special. They're not just standard language. They convey certain things. So I think there's there's definitely that going on. And as far as the pieces that we're finding in the languages, there's a lot going on. We find traces of multiple languages that we know of, like Proto-Sinaitic, a lot of characters from the Proto-Sinaitic, which is essentially a proto language to the Egyptian language that we have now, or that we know of now, I should say. And so it's really interesting. We see some Phoenician type influence. We see some Mayan type glyphs occasionally, and then entire languages that are oblivious. Like we have no idea anything about them. They almost seem like alchemical glyphs or geometrical glyphs. They have, different lines associated with pyramids and that sort of thing. So it's very interesting. Some of the locals down there say that when they touch the glyphs, when they're cleaning the pieces and when they're handling it, that they'll get weird reactions. And there's actually an astrophysicist, Nassim Harriman, and he had done some interesting experiments where they had found that there was like electromagnetic frequencies and certain things that are emitted by some of these artifacts. And what's interesting is the pieces in Egypt also have a similar thing. Some of the pieces aren't really handled much because of the electromagnetic frequencies and such that they produce. And when I heard that, I was just blown away because you can take an EMF detector and walk up to these pieces and they literally register in different fashions, and some of them spike, and there's just no reason for that,
Yeah, and getting into that as well, because I know you talked earlier about crystals and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
It would seem that because we find jewelry with crystals in it throughout history, what is the historical value of that to ancient human civilization? What would you think about that? As we have about a minute and a half, so quick answer, and we can continue after the break.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, it's really I don't even want to start on that because I know I'm gonna butcher it. I do want to correct one thing though. I talked about that chin strap, and so we find these depictions of these Cthulhu type beings with these tentacles on their face, and there's also some with them braided with different garments, and they look just like the Egyptian ones in this case. And so we think that these creators from Kemet might be these B'nai Elohim. I just forgot that. I got sidetracked earlier, so I'll ask me that question again when we get back, and I'll answer it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, once again, we're talking about how it's potentially, and I would like to know, and maybe we'll get to know within our lifetime how civilizations, the ones we discovered so far, the ancient ones, how they managed to end up doing the same things. Like what are the chances of that if we left these tribes up to their own devices? There had to be something that connected them there. So what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to get ready to go into our top of the hour break. Fantastic conversation here with our guest, Mike Forrest, as he is schooling us on ancient civilizations and how that connects to current day humanity. Don't go anywhere, guys. We will be right back after this break.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we're clear and we're off camera for the next 5 minutes. See you in a minute. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio edition, because I'm filling in for Dave Scott here tonight. This is After Hour number 2 with our guest, Mike Forrest. We have about 30 seconds before we come back from the radio break, guys. This is the hour for questions. So if you could go ahead and line up your questions, I have tagged a few so far. We'll make sure to ask those on the back half of this hour, right after the next break. So would appreciate that, and please put them in caps so I can see them. Appreciate you. We got about 10 seconds before we come back from radio break, guys. Here we go. All right, everyone, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio After Hours number 2. It's After Hours Radio Edition, filling in for Dave Scott. We are back with our guest tonight, Mike Forrest, talking ancient civilizations. What ties them to us? Very important questions in this overall conversation, guys. Make sure that you go back, if you missed any of this tonight, youtube.com/@SpacedOutRadio. Catch up on the conversation because it's been a great one. As we go ahead and get ready to get back into the show, let's go ahead and do this here. All right, so starting off here. So it looks like you're showing us, Mike, some ancient stuff. Did you mean to do that?
Yeah, no, I just someone in the chat was talking about this picture up here, and I was just going to show it. This is a really special head that was found. It's a hollow inside, and there's a geode in there, made of quartz and red jasper, but it's got gills on it, which we thought was really quite interesting. So,
That is awesome. And for the radio audience, he is showing some really awesome ancient sculpture work, and just goes into more of the wonder of who these people were. And let me ask you this. So if you could go back to a certain civilization, ancient, if you could pick one, which one would you go back to for a day just to kind of see what it was like?
I mean, I would definitely go back to this one if I had the opportunity, knowing of this one. But as far as the known civilizations, I think probably the Mayan.
The Mayans. Heard
Yeah.
things were brutal back then, man.
I gotta retake that. The Dogon people. Yeah, the Dogon people definitely have my interest still. Like, I would just love to know more. It's such a lot of mystery, but I think they hold a ton of the secrets. Their story really resonates with me in terms of a lot of these type of things that we're seeing, and they believed in these things called the Nomo, which came out of the sea. And that brings a really interesting thing, that a lot of these beings, they look like they have serpent tails, or that they don't have feet, but then some of them have looks like straight Little Mermaid fin type things on them. So there's definitely a lot of question on that. We've actually found real tridents too, 4 foot long tridents made of limestone with silver and iron and tin as a composition of the head that's on this thing. I mean, sharpened to hurt somebody. It's quite the piece. But yeah, that's a lot of the Atlantis type things. That's even like that picture that I was just showing. It almost reminds me of something that you'd see off of the Aquaman movie or something in terms of Atlantis. And so we see this type of sci-fi almost influence, or almost like people's imaginations that have created sci-fi have been influenced by something that maybe is more ancient or deeper within us than what we understand. And I saw someone earlier say that the eye of Horus is kind of like the pineal gland inside of our brain, and so there's actually pieces showing these different stages of this light and these glands, all the way down to the inside the head. And so we wonder if that might be where some of these images come from. Like, that's like a portal inside the brain. It creates a lot of the cocktails that we have in terms of our balancing of chemicals like serotonin and dopamine and that type of thing, to where it can even produce a DMT, which is like a psychoactive found in the roots and things down there of certain plants that they use to create the ayahuasca from. And that's a really interesting correlation with this topic too, is that experience from ayahuasca and how it relates to some of these beings and entities, and what people have described them looking like and being like, and then seeing these pieces. There's possibly a lot of connection there.
If you had to gauge off of the, I guess in this case, ancient civilizations that we know about, which one, which ones would you would say would be at the top of technological advancement if you put them next to each other?
I mean, obviously the pyramid builders, anywhere there's pyramids, there's significant advancement there, more so than what anyone's really talking about in the mainstream science. And the proof of that is you look at how many geniuses have been born since the pyramids have been built, and not one of them could conduct how they were built, let alone even the foundation, and how it could be engineered to hold such a structure for such a period of time through, you know, all the variables that it's up against. And I think that's really an important factor, that these ancient civilizations, a lot of them that have pyramids, like the Mayan or even the ancient Egyptians, don't necessarily say that they're the ones that built the pyramids. And we try to place it on Khufu, that it was his or not temple, but his burial tomb. And that's just, there's just no way. There's one little box in there, but it won't fit a man. It's not the right type of thing, let alone the way these ducts are, and all these vents and this type of stuff within this, and the type of buildup that we found in the pyramid itself. I think the ancient Egyptians, we have the evidence that they were the most advanced, and that's because the Giza pyramid complex almost acts as if it was an industrial complex at one point, based on certain things that have been found. You look at Dunn's theory and certain things like that, and then he elaborates on this very deep. J.J. Hertak also has a book called the Giza Industrial Complex that goes deep into that. They found, inches thick of this dust, and this dust is only a byproduct of creating hydrogen. So it's really a bizarre thing to find inside of these, shafts and things.
And you make a great point, because I've always thought about that when looking back at the pyramids. It's just those shafts. It doesn't make sense, the passageways, and you have to think about the when you were talking about level of advancement. I mean, the trap door system that they have in there is just insane. It's like, how could someone in that time create something that is that precise and that effective? It's mind blowing when you think about
Yeah.
it.
To get
What do you
those stones positioned in there is mind-boggling.
when you think about which is well, first let me ask you this before we go further. There is a discrepancy in how old people think the pyramids are. How old do you think they are based on your research?
I really agree with Robert Schock in terms of the erosion on the Sphinx, and I think the Sphinx for sure is much older. I really feel that the pyramids are likely much older as well. And how old is really a hard question. The Egyptian timeline is really, all these timelines are really bizarre, to be honest with you, and how it measures down. But the way that they've dated the Great Pyramids, from the organic materials between the blocks and that sort of thing, though that's not a valid way of getting a for sure date that that's when that thing was built. So I really think that there's a lot of room to play there. And with the flood tables and the erosion that you see, there's definitely something that occurred at some point, and it wasn't in the last 4,000 years. So I think we know that based on other areas that we've researched, that it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think when they talk Anunnaki, they're talking about what 7-8,000 years ago is supposed to be the number roughly. Is that what it is?
That's what they originally were saying, but now you look at Göbekli Tepe and Karen Tepe, and they have dates 13,000 years old there, and there's Anunnaki relation things there as well. And you find the handbag and certain inscriptions there on the pillars that, I mean, it definitely brings light to that, or that they have more age. And you look at the Anunnaki kings list, or the Sumerian kings list rather, and it goes back 250,000 years in some cases, and in other cases even longer. And it's got the names of all these kings, and I mean, it's quite the storyline to just fabricate for fun, and make this huge stone pillar with it on there. It doesn't make doesn't make sense.
And then to squeeze all that into a small window of time is just what doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And the whole carbon dating thing, I think is like best guess sort of stuff, because when they put numbers on something, is like the universe being 13.5 billion years old. Like, where do you get the math from? Like, what kind of math are we doing here? And that if that is inaccurate, then you have to look at all the other things that are guesstimated and wonder if those things are totally off too. And we found out within science that we always readjust what we thought 20 years ago, and then now we have this new theory. Now all of a sudden James Webb Telescope is saying the Big Bang wasn't the Big Bang, and we're just finding out all this stuff. So it's always moving. One thing I wanted to ask you about was the Puma Punku, are one of the eras that fascinate me the most, just because of the fact they were able to get those perfect edges.
The
Like,
H blocks and the edges. Yeah.
where else do you see that, and what do you think about that period, and how how far advanced do you think maybe they got? Because for me,
Uh,
that's precision there.
yeah. Well, and that composition of that stone has actually brought me really, really some inquisitivity, because it's almost like a combination. Like they looked at the stone type, and it's like multiple types of stone put together. They almost think that it was like turned to liquid at some point, or made like a concrete or a mud.
Mhm.
And that's something that we see in Tula as well. As some of these stones, they almost seem like they were formed with a mold, or formed in a liquid state and then dried. When we had some scanning electron microscope scans done of some of these limestone pieces, the lab, they don't see the right type of erosion on there, and they see that the surface has been treated. And I find that to be really interesting, because obviously for these pieces to look as good as they do at this point in time, after as long as they've been, it's unlikely. You look at the limestone in Egypt and certain things in that nature, and they just don't last. But because this could have been buried in a volcanic explosion or some sort of cataclysm, the way it was preserved in the ground, the oxidation and erosion and all this stuff, is going to be more like a time capsule. And so I definitely believe that in order to carve these complex limestone sculptures, I mean, some of these things have hundreds of little windows and different things to get it to prevent from cracking. I believe that they utilized a technique, and they find high concentrations of chlorine, and so I believe they had a way of extracting or getting chlorine. We also find specific alloys of metal, like the trident I was talking about earlier, how it's silver. It's like 48% silver, and the rest is iron and tin. And so to get these crazy metal alloys, there's all these gold leaf pieces that we find, and you can take an XRF and scan all these alloys of gold leaf. Not one of them is consistent with the other in terms of, this one's got more, silver in it. This one has more copper in it. This one is, 13 carats. This one's 12 carats. And so that's not something that you would see on a modern forgery or a replica. If you go buy gold leaf, it's usually at the highest purity possible, because it's hammered out to extreme thin levels, and gold's very, very expensive. So no one's going to mess around with 12 or 13 karat gold leaf.
Right. Do you think that as these ancient civilizations were in their day, and maybe they were aware of previous ancient civilizations? Do you think that they were aware that civilizations reach a certain peak, they come and go, therefore they leave data for the next civilization to find or discover? Do you think that that's what they did, and why we're able to find things today? And then if you were to kind of grade the detail that they left, do you think they did what they left was a great example of how we should maybe leave data for civilizations that come ahead from us?
That's a great question. And so to answer that, I think what they did, the truth is set on stone, or the truth's always set in stone. That saying, I believe, is really logical in terms of, think about all the noses in Egypt that have been broken off and all the tablet walls that have been desecrated, but there's still buried temple. There's things that have been forgotten. And because they're on stone, they lasted through the test of time, and they're still here today for us to try to understand. And that's, I mean, you look at Iraq specifically in the Middle East, where it's been, bombed and destroyed and all these things. I mean, the Temple of Ur and Abraham's house and all these things are just in ruins. Was it from us doing it or from previous? Yeah, I mean, there's all these sites are in ruins somehow. All these Greek Temple of all these places, Parthenon, it's all fallen apart and it's all destroyed somehow. And so, but the stone keeps it intact no matter how much they've destroyed it. So I think that's really ideal, and probably, you know, some people say that these crystal skulls have, data put in them too. And I think that we're still in the discovery phase of really how good they were at recording information. And it's possible that they may have used those things as hard drives. We know that quartz crystals can be programmed to do a lot of different things, and we use them to run all of our computers, or at least a good chunk of quartz goes into the silicon of every chip that we use. So um, there's something going on there too that we may still find, I think.
And I think that's actually a good thing for you to talk to if you're able to, just the whole crystal aspect, because just from the outside, a person looks at a crystal as a piece of jewelry, a gem, and nothing further. Doesn't realize that there are other capabilities or that they were used for ritualistic things and sacred meanings. And so, if you be able to kind of go into some of that, I think that would definitely help out.
Yeah. Yeah, metaphysical stuff was, I collected rocks and stones for a long time and never knew about any of that stuff. And then, as I got older, we came across some people doing fortune telling or something like that, and I seen some rock specimens, and I started to associate that more and more with the healing properties too. And that's, I think, a really valid thing. Frequency sound healing is really a big thing right now that we can see cymatics and know that these sacred geometries that are, the source itself, are created with special tones and things, frequencies lining up together and creating harmony. I'm a musician, and that's something that I find really fascinating. And you sit there and listen to these people play these crystal bowls or these tuning for, I mean, there's all kinds of frequency out there. And even though it just feels like a sound, when it hits you, it's a whole nother story. There's a real feeling involved. I used to get that when I'd collect certain rocks and things. I like just to hold them in my hands, and um, there's probably something more to it. And I feel that's logical, especially the ones that are emitting the electromagnetic frequencies. Who knows what type of potential. We've actually had a few people that kind of get nauseous or dizzy when certain pieces have gotten here. My mom included, on an unbiased thing. She was just over visiting and got all weird and dizzy, and I'd had the same thing happen to myself. And so we wonder if some of these pieces, because they were close to the pyramids, or they may be lingering with some of this power, that they might have utilized back in this time. Talks about a lot of that in the Atlantis stories of powers and things of that nature. Technologies, crystals specifically, are talked about a lot in the Atlanteans. So, uh, is it a coincidence that the statues in Tula are called Atlanteans? That's really a better question. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because when you talk about the Atlanteans, I know Tucson Mufon, who was asked a question about gems earlier. She actually came on and talked about the Atlantean crystals, and so we got to get into that and how special those were, apparently, to the Atlanteans.
Mhm.
But what do you think? Like, once all these pieces are put together, or if there's, well, let me answer this first. Do you think so far there has been a solid link that connects these all these ancient civilizations together, and kind of even joins in with what we're doing now? Is there one link? Is there anything that has been detected that links everything together?
Yeah, God.
Yeah, okay. I like that. I like
I
okay,
mean,
I
really
like
though, like every civilization that I come across has something they revere as a god of some form or another, and I find that is the one thing that truly links us all together. We all have a faith or a belief in something, and it doesn't matter what it is, we all share that together. And music's another thing too. It connects us all. It goes back to the tone and the frequency. And what's really bizarre is that light is a frequency as well, and moves in wavelengths and can be measured in the same way that sound can. And that's really an interesting factor too, because when you look at the different light spectrums, I mean, we live in a photonic universe. So essentially, all the matter that's here is a form of light.
So the common denominator across the board being religion, which is very interesting. And to say that for current day, not just because we have all these different religious outlets that also have these stories that are so much alike, but even in the current UFO moment, we've had some of these officials kind of lean into or insinuate religious undertones or aspects to this, and you wonder why initially, but then when you talk to a person like yourself and you kind of put the pieces together, sort of makes sense. What do you think will be the thing that we find out about all this? Like, what do you think will be the final thing, hopefully, that we find out while we're alive?
That's something I ponder a lot. Like, what's finally going to move the needle? You have all of these things that are kind of being pushed under the rug or not being talked about, like the Nazca mummies had been debunked supposedly. However, we've got 100 different mummies and 15 different species and DNA and hundreds of scientists coming forward and saying it's legitimate, but it doesn't matter. It's just like disclosure. It's been in our face this whole time. We know there's UFOs. We know there's legitimate spottings. We have gimbal footage from military. We have eyewitnesses and people with crash report, but still it doesn't matter. Like, it's just getting swept under the rug still today. This has all been published and it's out there. So the debunking, and I think you touched on this slightly earlier, you have a disclosure movement right now that's kind of ignoring disclosure. And to me, that was something that I figured as soon as people saw with what we had here from Mexico, that it would be all over the place. And I mean, we had some viral videos and stuff like that, but as far as news agencies, people who do talk shows, anything, people that were well established, it seemed like it was a brick wall. They wouldn't even talk about this topic. They wouldn't even acknowledge me or act like I exist. I would chase them down at events and try to talk to these people, and very few of them I was ever able to penetrate through. And I mean, these are people who say that their lifelong passion is this topic, and they won't even return a phone call or acknowledge, oh yeah, I mean, some of them have said that that's not real or that that's fake, but none of them have any evidence or any testing. I worked with Linda Moulton Howe for quite some time when I first started this. I reached out to her. She's an Idaho resident, just like myself, or born in Idaho, and thought she would be a great person to handle this, because she's been in it for a long time, and truly it seems like she has a passion for it. And she did. She was so excited. She had me give her all this stuff and make these pamphlets, and she was giving them to different PhDs. She wanted to go down there and do an investigation. Sorry. And well, one day, all of a sudden, she had an anthropologist that I met with, and we showed some of these pieces. The anthropologist said, no, that's a fairy tale. There's no way that that's real. And after that, she just ghosted it. I was never able to get back in touch with her for almost 3 years. When I finally did, it was a Contact in the Desert. I gave her 3 of my books. She's like, oh yeah, we want to have you on the Earth Files and talk about this. She was very appreciative of the books, looked them over, and said she'd reach out via email, and again, nothing. And so it's a really weird brick wall. There's career ufologists and people who have devoted their lives to this, and somewhere in there it's getting blocked. You take someone like Scott Woltar, the forensic geologist that had the show America Unearthed on the History Channel, and he actually did a show about this. He brought on Mark Russell, the archaeologist, which was the archaeologist that sold my friend his pieces down there at the Tucson Gem Show. And he was on there. They carbon dated pieces, looked at them with scanning electron microscope, said that there's a good chance this is going to change history.
And we'll go ahead. We'll have you stop right there, Mike, as we'll continue this right after the break. Guys, it's been fun and interesting conversation, very insightful. You guys don't go anywhere right here, Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show edition. Filling in for Dave Scott. See you guys in just a minute. All right, we are clear, and I'm going to do this for you, Galactic Disclosure Movement, this one time. But you are. I just released my comedy special while my podcast is starting in 2 weeks because my Lyrian co-host is always late for the show. Check it out after SOR. You'll be dying, I guess, is the emoji. Thank you for advertising this SOR. You're the very best. This one time, because advertising, you have to actually contact our advertising department here at Spaced Out Radio, info@spacedoutradio.com, because I would hate for you to show love and support for the show like you just did and not be able to bring the comment up on the screen. That would be, it would hurt me to have to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and make it happen today. But future advertisements, we have to do it the correct way and go through our channels to do that. So that is Disclosure, Galactic Disclosure Movement. Appreciate you, and go check out their podcast in 2 weeks. All right, Cody Eiler, thank you for coming on in. Let's see, who else do we have? Earth Goat Trees, very interesting what Michael is saying about Linda. I've just seen her on Ancient Aliens. Nice. Let's see.
Sounds like a lot of people having the same experience.
That's the thing. That's the beautiful thing, too, especially when you have conversations like these, because then they resonate. People understand this is not, anything that's made of. You've done the research. You're able to bring these receipts to the table, which is where we get to learn from this and kind of just furthers our knowledge, fills in some gaps for things we may have heard before. So this is why it's beautiful. And the motto for the After Hours show, and you said it earlier, which was amazing, which is moving the needle, conversations that move the needle, and that conversations have to do that for me. Like we can't end up in the same place we started at if we're going to have these conversations. So I'm enjoying it, and I think you're awesome. And I have your information, would love to reach out to you because I do the weekend show normally, the After Hours. So I'd love to kind of book you for something on there as well.
Yeah, anytime.
Awesome. And you guys show your love for the show tonight. Put the hit the like button and get us going. Yeah, no, all good. Galactic Disclosure Movement, because you know how it goes. If we do one person, then everybody will be super chatting $5 to advertise their show. So no, it's all good. And just go ahead and send the email, and we'll get you all set up and real nice. So appreciate you. And let's see. Let's see here. Who else is out there? No, I think we're good. Yeah, guys, get your questions ready. Let me see how many we have so far. One. Let's see. Is this the same question? Yep, same question. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we got four. So let's load them up, guys. Let's do maybe 5 or 6 more. We may be able to squeeze them in. Some good ones I see, and we'll jump into those the moment we come back from break here.
Yeah, it is kind of too bad. Yeah.
Yes, Earth Goat Trees is saying, I'm really enjoying Mike's passion for his work. He seems truly in for the right reasons. too legit to quit. The gemstone info is very interesting, and I know you're in the middle of explaining that, Mike, so it could have you finish that up when we come back, and then jump into those questions. All right. And Christine Lynn, I've been lurking. Very interesting show, Michael Forrest and Rob G. Well, we do appreciate you, Christine Lynn. Thanks for coming in, and thanks for helping us do what we do and move this needle. And that's where your questions come into play here too. You guys always have awesome questions, and they're going to help further this conversation as well. So appreciate you all. And I got you, Paul Damon. I got you, Tucson Mufon. And
I wanted to be there so bad, Karen. I just finished my 6th book though, so I couldn't get down there this year. Next year though, it's on.
Right. And actually I want to touch the books, and I have the books sitting here, and I want so we'll do the gems, and I definitely want to touch your books. Then we'll get to the questions. Do you have any of them right there with you?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll just have you bring them up, kind of speak to them. And we got about 5 seconds. All right, everybody, welcome back. Spaced Out Radio After Hour number 2 is 1.5 because we have about 30 minutes left in the second hour. Not much time left with our guest. Awesome, Mike Forrest, getting us caught up to date on ancient civilizations, where we stand in the whole mix. We'll be getting to your questions here in the next half hour. Don't forget, once again, if you missed any of the show, please consider going into our archives, youtube.com/@spacedoutradio. We go ahead and jump back into the conversation, Mike. I know you were right in the middle of talking about the gems, and if you want to go ahead and finish that thought up.
Yeah, I know we were talking about Scott Wolter's show there, and essentially how they carbon dated there after my buddy had met Mark Russell down there at the Tucson Gem Show, and they had a show there on America Unearthed, and that was the last season of America Unearthed, and it had really high ratings. In fact, it rated higher that year than Ancient Aliens, is what Scott said on an interview a couple years after his show was not renewed. And the show there with these pieces had something to do with that. And still to this day, that show hasn't been renewed. And there's just a lot of really interesting facts that go around the disclosure movement itself, and the people who are getting the likes and getting the shares, the social media ingenuity, and how they're promoting certain topics but completely disregarding other things. There's been some recent debates and certain things that these guys are showing weird stances, and people are promoting false information and that sort of thing. And I feel that that's if you look at the Project Bluebeam that's talked about, there's this Disinformation Act, and even back in the 80s, the CIA or one of these agencies, alphabet agencies, were sending people to these disclosure events and these alien events, and doing weird things and reporting back on them and taking names and all this type of weird things. So there's definitely this influence I found, even just trying to get booths and to show up at these places. I was at Contact in the Desert last year. This year they won't even respond to me. And I've got money in my pocket ready to go. And they had a lack of attendance last year, yet they won't even respond to emails. And so there's just a really weird brick wall. There's a gentleman, Jimmy Church, who has been down to the site, dug in there. He's got a pretty popular show. And he said he wouldn't have it on his show because he couldn't verify it. And I'm like, well, you went down there and put your hands on the cave. And he has stuff about Bigfoot and things on there. So again, it's just like these prominent figures that won't fully go into what they're passionate about for whatever purpose,
That is awesome. And yeah, you're right. It's like, what you talked about with Project Bluebeam, they embedded certain CIA groups into the ufology community. And I interviewed Rick Doty once and asked him, if you look around ufology today, current day, do you see some of the same tactics being used that you used when you were active, and he said definitely yes. And I was trying to get him to point to maybe a specific entity that might be doing it, but he essentially let us know that yeah, I mean it's definitely still present and prevalent, and they are embedded in this community. And I asked him that at a time where we saw a lot of infighting within ufology, where groups who were on the same team were now going at each other's throats for whatever reason. And
Yeah.
it was apparently a direct effect of one of these sort of operations. So
Yep. That
yeah,
event I just spoke of had been sold recently. If you look at like David Wilcox stepping down of Gaia, and now you have major stakeholders in Gaia like Vanguard and BlackRock who are profiting major major money. Why would they be invested into Gaia? That's really an interesting fact in itself, that I find interesting in some of these roadblocks, that there's these large investment firms and companies with a lot of conspiracy around them involved with the finances of these companies.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And let me go ahead and get you some of these viewer questions so we can make sure we get them out the way here. We got the
Yeah.
first question that came up was Galactic Disclosure Movement was saying, question for Mike. What was one of the artifacts that you had to even take a step back yourself because it was so spectacular?
Yeah, I think this pitchfork that came out, I explained it earlier. I mean, literally something straight out of Atlantis. There's also like a 300, or excuse me, a 200-pound chessboard that came out. That seeing the chess games alone is just, because I played chess really heavily as a kid, and always in tournaments and clubs and that sort of thing. So to think that the game goes back to that extent before humans even existed is just mind blowing to me.
All right. And let's see. Next question we had was caged on the inside. Okay, yes. And this will go into what we need to talk about right now. Space Out Radio is wondering, is there a book with a lot of the carvings in them to see? Segue.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. This one here, I've actually got it. It's called Anunnaki, the Atlantis alien Mesoamerica connection, and I mean it's literally full of pictures of the digs and different the petroglyphs, all that type of stuff. We've got 5 different books. There's a book directly on Tula, a book directly on Abuelos, and they all have a high amount of pictures and descriptions of what that is, carbon dates, that sort of thing. I recently wrote this book, which is a textbook. It's all, there's pictures and stuff in there, but mostly just history and how this connects to the ancient history of the Toltecs and that sort of thing, and to the Anunnaki. And my 6th book I just finished last night. It's not fully published yet, but will be soon. And that's a catalog. So this room that I'm sitting in, as well as all the things in my safes and around here at the house, I documented all of these pieces and cataloged them, and made a 400-page catalog that will go through each item with high macro photography and different lights, so you can see the fluorescence. A lot of these pieces glow, so there's a
Mm.
real high beauty when you hit it with a UV light.
And what would be date range from the oldest to maybe one of the most current, with if you had to just give a quick number?
Yeah, just 10 to 20,000 years is the most common.
Yikes. Okay. Okay. That is serious. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Jennifer is asking, I'd like to know more about that head picture on, okay, that, and you showed the head.
Yep.
Let's see. All right. Jennifer again, are your sculptures replicas or real? Can we get some more show and tell, please?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I've done 5 years of research, and a lot of these are documented coming out of the ground from start to finish. They start with a GPR scan and dig the hole, and everything is photographed and videoed through. So that sort of stuff I'm confident is genuine. Um, but there's definitely pieces that we found that are not too. So not all of these things can obviously be real, and so I don't want to say that they're all real, because we're still researching. I haven't been able to afford testing on every single piece, and not every piece has been documented the way I would want it. It's taken me a lot of effort and money to hire and to have an extra person standing over their shoulder or having the right equipment. I mean, it's not something that they want to stand out in that area. So we've had to be, strategically covert to some extent. And it's a really interesting situation. I mean, you can't just have the government come to the site either. We've tried to have the INAH come to verify. They won't even show up out there. I mean, they say it's fake, but they won't even come to the site to verify it, which is just really alarming to me.
Yeah, which is what the problem we had with those mummies, right? With the
Same thing.
mummies. They're like, guys, come sample them, come do something with these things instead of just on the face saying they're fake and a hoax. And
Yeah.
I'll never understand why scientists haven't stepped up to do it yet, but we'll see. Let's
I think
see.
we're starting to see, and it's a complex, deep thing that might house technology and lies and truths that could really greatly be bad for certain entities on the planet. I don't know how far that goes, but there's definitely a threat somewhere.
Yes. The cover up goes deep once again. Paul Demond says, question, thoughts on the Nazca lines, pictures only seen from the air.
Yeah, the Nazca area specifically. I mean, I they've always thought that it could be like runways and different ways to signal these crafts. Well, I think with the Vimana in India, and obviously finding a lot of spacecraft, UFOs, different sorts of ships from these areas in Mexico. That's why. I mean, they had the ability to fly around, and even back, I think it was King Solomon who had a chariot that could fly. One of these kings could also fly in some of the texts, which was interesting.
All right. And then Hillbilly Herb is asking, has Mike seen any of the symbols, code folks are drawing that they have seen in recent DMT laser experiments? I'm super curious if they match anything from antiquity.
I got to go look through that again. I watched just a small clip on those experiments, and I haven't really gotten too deep with it yet, so I can't answer that with the best of my ability. But um, there have been a lot of sacred geometries and different sorts of things carved on the pieces, which is interesting in itself, like the flower of life and things of that nature. Different platonic solids, and yeah.
All right. And let's see, I think that was actually the last question for now. You guys, we still have a few minutes to okay.
I'll answer Scott's question. I see one.
Yep.
He asked if I was the author, and yep, I'm the author of this. If you go to aliencarvings.com, you'll see at the very top up there's a link that sends you to all the books, and you can see them there. They're all on Amazon.
Okay, and for the radio, that question from Scott was, are you the author of the first book you showed, or was it someone else? If so, who is it? All right, and then we had another question actually pop up in the chat from Earth Goat Trees. Question, do you have any information about the Southwest USA's Kachina, mostly Tucson area?
I think I know what you're talking about. Isn't that the Anasazi belief, a Native American thing? And if that's the case, then yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really interesting things in the Tucson and all the way up into Utah, Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, it goes back to the Native American connections, and I think the Anasazi are definitely um, connected in with the Anunnaki in some respects, or have had visitations. Same thing with the Hopi, with the ant people. We find weird mantis and ant-looking beings on some of these carvings, so it's definitely plausible.
All right, and as of this moment, that was the last question. So, is there any evidence of where those civilizations may have gone? As far as some theories are, maybe some went off planet at some point, maybe they got to a certain technological point and then they went off planet, and then because some people theorize that some of these visitations may be us from that have left off planet from a long time ago. Have you even thought about anything like that? And where would you go with that? What would be your opinion?
Yeah, no, I put a lot of thought into that, and the Mayans specifically, a large population seemed to have just disappeared, and I really think that that's an interesting relevation. I mean, we see a lot of stargates. There's a lot of weird stargates into the side of mountains down in Peru and different areas, Bolivia. So I think there could be portal technology being utilized. Also, if history repeats itself, and the end goal for us is ascension, per the Bible or Pistis Sophia or whatever, then there's a logicality that maybe a large sum of those people ascended, and that the ones that remained didn't, and that's who that we knew today. I mean, yeah, that's where my mind's thought about, but yeah, I have no affirmative belief on that. Yeah.
With our civilization currently as advanced as it is, there are even talks about the best ways of preserving our history, and some people have said things like maybe put something in orbit that orbits the planet that carries our data in case something happens down here. Do you think that with the capabilities that we currently have, that there would ever run a risk of our history being lost like these other civilizations?
I think parts of it, of course. I mean, that we're only as good as what we document, and I found that firsthand with these pieces. I mean, I tried to find more information on them, and there wasn't a lot. There was a lot of just, oh, it's fake, but there wasn't a lot of science. There wasn't, oh, we went down there and dug here, here, and here, and found this, and that. No, no follow up like we just said. So I think that, yeah, it's not, eh, no.
Yeah, because when you think about it, and you just bring up a great point that I never thought about. If it all ended tomorrow, like all the things that we've left on the table that we didn't even try to pursue or give the time to vet.
Mhm.
And one of the things, and I brought this up often because of the current situation we're going through, which I think is still happening with the drones above certain cities, but the news cycles in our attention spans, right? In our appetite for focusing on something that could be a disclosure moment. It just showed me that, okay, if these things in the sky are anomalous and this happens to be part of maybe some upcoming disclosure moment, it just bothered me that civilization, or we were so short-minded as far as the attention span went. We had everyone's attention at once, and everybody was like, what is this? We want answers, and went for days and days and days. Then it got to a point that it was like, oh, I'm just tired of talking about it, let's move on to the next thing, with no resolution to or answer to what it is that we're dealing with. And it kind of leans into what you just said, but how do you feel about just the appetite, what it seems like for most people when it comes to something that could be is groundbreaking as far as humanity goes?
Yeah, I mean, I really think that things like the blockchain and that type of technology where you're handing data around, in this fashion. Once we get that into like a satellite orbital fashion, where it's the satellites passing around this data, then I think we could probably get, maybe a little closer to preserving it. But again, something comes in and the planet blows up, then where's that data at? So I don't know how well you can preserve it at that point. But also when you look at like the James Webb and some of these satellites, how you're actually able to see back in time based on the light trails essentially being left. I think if we had a way to look back with enough precision optics, we could literally see everything we've ever done, probably because it's a light trail behind us, like a tracer that never ends. Um, Logically, based on what they can see with those telescopes.
And so since you brought James Webb up, with the ability that it could see so far out, I've always asked this and thought that it was maybe a thing. Hubble telescope was pretty good on its own, Now, if we're talking about looking at things within the universe, with the high levels of magnification, even with Hubble, we should be able to see certain things on certain planets. With James Webb, which is such more, and I know it looks in other spectrums as well, but do you think that maybe something has been detected by either Hubble or James Webb that would lead those researchers to come to the conclusion that there definitely are other things out there in this universe living?
Outside of signals, I don't think so. I mean, I know we found some pretty crazy signals out there. Um, but as far as seeing, bases or things on planets that would signify, civilizations, I don't think we've got there. I mean, the James Webb is still a long exposure type of a camera, so anything that's moving out there is, you're not going to get that kind of detail because you're going to get a stack of hundreds of images of light pushed together, and so I think
Mhm.
until we can get beyond that technology, that we're not going to find pinpoint data, be able to see the pyramids on another planet or anything of that nature, without refining our technology first.
Okay, okay. And then to go off of that right there, so pyramids, supposedly pyramids on Mars. What are your thoughts on that?
There was a gentleman, J.J. Hurtak, that wrote that book, The Keys of Enoch, I mentioned earlier, and he actually remote viewed the pyramids on Mars and told them where to look with their probe they'd never been to Mars prior to this. He told them where to look because he remote viewed it. He later worked for the United States government, doing remote viewing in the Cold War with Russell Targ, and wrote a book on it with Elizabeth Rauscher. Well, remote viewing was pretty far fetched for me in my wheelhouse when I first heard about it. This was kind of just hard for me to swallow. But now seeing this whistleblower come forward with these psionic assets and talking about remote viewing and things that they're doing in the military right now to summon these orbs, I mean, I'm sitting here shaking my head, literally.
Yeah, pretty mind blowing. And my a thought that I had, and obviously we won't know until they go since till we get men on Mars to actually start digging. But I'm under the feeling that when we do get there and we start digging below the surface, that we are likely to run into fossils that could look like human fossils, or even other animals that we may be familiar with on this planet. And I feel like part of that whole ancient history that we have here maybe links up to the fact that possibly we inhabited a planet like Mars and then came here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of logical purpose. I mean, those pyramids on Mars, I definitely believe there was civilizations, or that there was things that maybe not civilizations of organic material like us, but maybe something beyond that that was interplanetary or interdimensional, utilized different planets and things for purposes like satellites or sending and receiving signals or energy. We find artifacts with depictions of the pyramids with beams going up to celestial bodies. So I think there's chrono monitoring and different things that are going on with these different things. We see a lot of Saturn depictions on these pieces. Saturn's a really pinnacle figure in so many ancient cultures, and so likely this was the time of Saturn worship in, like with Kronos and things of that nature in the Greek, or um, there's almost a translation for Saturn in every culture. That's an interesting fact too.
Yeah, yeah. I'm doing the show on my other personal channel about potentially life being in within our own solar system. Has anybody even stopped to think about that? And let's kind of go over that. But we have about a minute left, and I want to make sure that you go ahead and be able to tell everybody where they could find you.
Yeah. Definitely on Instagram or TikTok, any of those. I can't access TikTok anymore, but my profile's still there with a ton of content. But YouTube is where I've been posting a lot of things, mostly in terms of documentaries. And I've been trying to make as many videos covering the digging and the finding of these objects and that sort of stuff. There's some lectures I gave at a couple events on there. And our website as well is a huge manifestation of over 10,000 different of these pieces that you can go look at. And and check out there. And our books are on Amazon, as I said earlier. And yeah, feel free to reach out anytime or join our mailing list and stay up to date.
That is awesome, Mike. We will definitely be doing that. And you guys definitely go over to the page and subscribe. Great videos over there as well. Pleasure talking to you tonight and meeting you as well, Mike. We'll definitely have to do this again. I'll be reaching out to you soon. You have a great rest of your night.
Sounds good. You too. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Yeah. All right, guys. That was Mike Forrest, ancient alien carvings. We're going to be talking about more as we come back in hour number 3. See you in a minute.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, guys. See you in a few minutes here. Yes, welcome back to the Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio edition with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. As we get ready to jump into a great hour 3, we have Steve Stockton Tells Untold Missing Person Mysteries, and then we have UFO Tim James stopping through for some great convo and maybe some weird stories if we can get to those. Here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours Radio Show edition. Filling in for Dave Scott here tonight as we get ready to jump into hour 3 with Steve Stockton Tells Untold Missing Person Mysteries, UFO Tim James with the UFO Report, followed by maybe some weird news. We'll have to see. If you missed any of the great conversation with our guest earlier tonight, Michael Forrest, jump in the archive, youtube.com/@SpacedOutRadio. As we get ready to kick off the third and final hour here, we're going to jump in to Steve Stockton Tells Untold Missing Person Mysteries. Once again, always love that Steve Stockton is a part of the show here on the After Hours Radio Show edition of Spaced Out Radio. So here we go. Let's go ahead and jump on into it.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries. Strange experience in Starved Rock State Park, Illinois. I had a very strange experience 12 years ago in Starved Rock State Park, Illinois. It was so bizarre at the time, I never discussed it. I began reading the missing 411 stories a few weeks ago and realized what I encountered fits into the missing 411 profile. Additionally, since many of the missing 411 stories border on the unexplainable and bizarre, I feel what I encountered was not unique, that it was part of an actual phenomenon. Here's my story. I was visiting my girlfriend in Chicago. On a sunny and calm winter day, we decided to go for a hike at Starved Rock State Park. I'm an avid hiker, and being on leave from Iraq, I wanted to take in some cool, fresh air. We hiked the park for several hours. In late afternoon, we started heading back to the car. About a half mile away from the parking lot, we came into an area where tree branches were broken and pulled towards or over the trail. Most of the branches were broken high up, I'd say 8 feet and more off the ground. I lived in Washington State before going to Iraq and knew something of Sasquatch areas. So I told the girlfriend it looked like a Squatch area due to the branches broken off up high and pulled over the trail. That's about the time things started to get strange. Soon after mentioning this, I felt like someone was staring at me. It's like if you go in a room with a lot of people and someone is focused on you, you get an uneasy feeling and can tell you're being watched. It was like this, but stronger. I started to look around to see who was watching me. It was winter and the forest was visible hundreds of feet in all directions. There was a group of walkers several hundred feet behind us and no one in front of us, but I saw no one staring at me. As we passed through the Squatch area, I began to have the feeling someone was behind me, following us. I looked around and listened, but saw and heard nothing. There was just people 400 feet or so back on the trail, and they were talking amongst themselves. They weren't looking our way. The sense of someone being behind me was persistent, so I kept looking behind me, I'd say at least twice a minute. But there was just a group way back there. The feeling of being watched is one thing, but feeling like someone is close behind you is something else. It is more disturbing. I told the girlfriend to go further in front of me and let her go about 20 feet in front because I had a strong sensation of a nearby presence just behind us. So I turned around not more than 30 seconds since the last time I looked back, and there's this woman there. She was walking, but coming up on me fast. There was something way off about her speed. She was walking when I spotted her, but her speed was much faster than her gait. It was as if she were on a people mover escalator like in an airport. She was coming up fast and was, I'd say, no more than 15 or 20 feet behind me when I saw her. I was rather alarmed and glared at her. She stopped when our eyes met. I gave her a look like, WTF are you doing coming upon me like that? We stood there staring at each other. Neither of us moved. She had her head cocked back to her left and looked at me from the corner of her eyes in a slightly alarmed, you caught me type of look. She was completely normal looking, like a local Chicago lady, late 50s, wearing a bright red winter coat, gloves, slacks, etc. In hindsight, there are a few other things besides her speed which stand out. The first thing is there was no sound, no footsteps, no rustling in the woods, nothing to tell me to turn around other than the strong sense of something behind me, which I'd had for a bit. At the speed she was moving, she would have had to have been running hard, but I heard no footsteps. She was not breathing hard and her mouth was closed. Her gait was a walking gait. She was not running. However, she was moving towards me at a running speed. I mean fast. When she stopped, I'd say she was less than 20 feet from me. At the speed she was moving, in 1 or 2 seconds, she'd have been on me. The next thing that stands out is her features. She had no distinguishing features. None in her hair, skin, or clothing. No shadowing or skin hues, dimples, etc. As a former Army criminal investigator, I know to look for distinctive markings on people and clothing. There were none. I'd estimate her height at 5 foot 10 inches. Her clothes were of uniform coloring and indistinct. It was like she just stepped out of a department store. Her bright red coat was pristine with a uniform hue to it. There wasn't even shading, which there should have been given the clear sky and low sun. After staring at each other for, I'd say, 5 to 10 seconds, I felt like I got my point across, so I turned around and continued walking. The girlfriend had not noticed anything and had continued walking. I took about 3 steps and realized there was no way she could have come up from that group in the 30 or so seconds since I'd last looked back. There was also nowhere to come from on either side. Visibility at that point was hundreds of feet all around. I said to myself, no way, and spun back around. She was gone, simply vanished. I checked the group behind us and no one had a red coat on or was looking at us. There was no one else around, and there had been no sounds other than my footfalls. The woman just vanished. From that point, it took us about 10 minutes to reach the car. For the remainder of the walk, I did not feel like I was being stared at or followed. I've never been back to Starved Rock State Park and have no intention of going back. The whole thing was bizarre. How was I supposed to tell anyone about that? So I never have. My mental state was fine. I have a high IQ and a 20-year career in a STEM field following Army service. At the time, I was working a DoD IT contract in Iraq. I was well rested and relaxed, being on vacation with the girlfriend. There were no drugs or alcohol involved. These are strictly prohibited in my line of work and were grounds for immediate termination under MNFI's GO1, which I was subject to at the time. I've carried this experience around for 12 plus years, being unable to talk about it because it was so exceptional and unexplainable. It's a relief to read similar stories of unusual encounters and disappearances. After reading many missing 411 accounts and the profile of disappearances, I believe I narrowly averted being snatched by whatever that thing was. I do not think it was the woman I saw. I think it was something different, which I could not see. Thank you, Anonymous. Eerie footsteps behind us. When I was around 12 years old, my girlfriend and I went with my parents to an isolated cabin that was only accessible by boat in northern Ontario, Canada, near my dad's reservation called Serpent River. Anyway, my brother was swimming in the lake, so my girlfriend and I decided to hike up a hill that ended up being quite steep with cedar trees all around us. So as we were making our way up, we decided to sit down and take a rest as the ground was covered in cedar needles and quite comfortable. As we were sitting there, we were chatting because we could see my brother swimming in the lake. From quite up high on the hill we climbed, then all of a sudden the ground was shaking underneath our butts like something so heavy was running behind us. It scared the daylights out of both of us, and we hightailed it down that hill. We did look behind us, but we could only feel it and could not see anything. To this day, I've always wondered what it could be. We thought the only possible thing that could make the ground vibrate like that might be a moose, but then again, I just couldn't see how or why a moose would be so high up on a hillside with rocks and cedar trees. It still perplexes me to this day. Anonymous.
All right. Once again, thanks to Steve Stockton, Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries, for delivering another assortment of awesome, fantastic missing persons cases. So sad, but so compelling when you hear Steve read those. Next, we're going to go ahead and jump right on in to the UFO Report with Tim James right here on the After Hours Radio Show edition, because I'm filling in for Dave Scott. And here we go. Got my own theme music for him today as well. So let's go. All right, the UFO Report with Tim James. Normally Dave Scott sits here, but it's me filling in for Dave tonight. Tim, always love when we can get together. How are you, man?
I'm doing good, Mr. Rob G.
All right, that is awesome, awesome stuff. So glad to be here. And I don't really get the UFO Report on the After Hour show, so it's going to be fun to hear what you got. What do you have tonight?
Well, same as last night. Well, what I was doing is I've got a little bit of news, and I just thought I'd dial it back a bit and just try to cleanse the palate and go back to some old stories and encounters and just nothing to do with very, just dial it down and
Love it. Exactly. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So the first thing, did you anybody out there see Stephen Cohen today? He's the representative out of Tennessee talking about drones. So I don't know if you saw it, but oh my gosh. So Steve Cohen, he's an American attorney and a politician, and he's serving as a U.S. representative from Tennessee in the 9th Congressional District since 2007. So the headline today reads, New Jersey drones were a viral internet hoax. Representative Steve Cohen claims of mass drone swarms shutting down airports is a conspiracy theory. At today's House Aviation Subcommittee hearing on counter UAS. Now, there is a video on this. This is not just somebody writing a story. There is there's a video. So I'm trying just to be level with it. So his quote, I want to debunk another recent aviation-related conspiracy theory. The so-called New Jersey drone crisis. Late last year, social media was flooded with claims of mass drone swarms shutting down airports and threatening public safety. I thought Orson Welles had come back. In fact, a full review by the FAA, FBI, and DHS found no credible security threats. Many of these sightings were misidentified commercial drones, law enforcement operations, and even fixed-wing aircraft mistaken for drones. We must separate fact from fiction so that we can focus on real threats, not viral internet hoaxes, and not run to the cameras to make a statement and demand that Washington do something about it when it was nothing to be done. I'm
Tim,
what?
I want you to go first because my first reaction is very explosive and I want to bring it in real quick. So what do you think about it?
I'm thinking that he was sleeping in the back of the bus when all the press conferences and everything was going. I don't know where he was, but yeah, it was like I had to report on it. It was like, are you kidding me, dude? Like everybody, we've had the White House come out and give us an excuse or whatever, what their take on it is. We've had hearings on it. We've had what zillions of videos and movies and from just people on the street. And he sits there in front of, a House committee and goes, "Yeah, no, it was all pretend. This isn't happening. You guys need to give your head a shake." I I was gobsmacked. I was like, "Really? Okay, so Tennessee. I know if I was there, I'd be voting that guy out." But yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just like, holy cow, man.
I want to see how this plays with the residents of New Jersey and in these places where this is still going on. How is that answer going to resonate with them? Because it feels like real time misinformation, like live in front of our face. Like, not even did they formulate the story behind the scenes from the beginning and then come out with this elaborate explanation of what this was.
Yeah.
All these little pieces of the story happen live right in front of our face. And to get this, it's very frustrating. It is very frustrating.
I know it's so ridiculous. I mean, it's humorous, but I don't know where his train of thought is. That'd be, like standing out in a snowstorm and saying, "Wow, is it ever warm out?" Like everybody else is looking around. I don't get it. I don't get it. And I'm thinking that, like I say, he must have been sleeping in the back of the bus or something.
And then you go a step further to say the FAA has investigated this and determined that this was the case. So do we get to be included in on this investigation that happened? Apparently, when did it happen? Because we've been talking to the FAA the whole time asking for answers. So when did this story or this thing be able to get crafted into existence? And it should. Yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry, man. I'm just saying. I'm thinking that I'm not sure if to me, if this is like having your old weird uncle at the table at Thanksgiving or something, right? Like coming up with, it's like, okay, yeah, give him some more turkey, right? Yeah. Is it made up? Was there really anything? Like, this is the first time I've heard of anything, like you say, from the FAA having these meetings and the FBI and everybody getting together on this. I'm sure that they have had talks, but I mean, he's the only person that said anything and then followed it up with a bunch of gobbledygook, right? So,
did you get the feeling that this was coming from a personal opinion place, or that he's reporting on information that he's gotten from somewhere else?
no, I'm thinking that this was his way of satisfying and debunking it himself. I think this was just a story and a train of thought that he has, because yeah, I don't know what department or what group of people would even think of putting anything out like that right at this point in time after everything that's gone on and all, everything. It's, yeah, I think he's just thinks it's all just a grand illusion.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be too far off the ridiculous statement that we got from the White House press secretary. Now, if there was going to be they had time to craft something way better than that, and to see that that's what they ended up coming up with, then yeah, this kind of isn't shocking that this would be the next thing said. But if we're talking about integrity, we're talking about credibility being on the line, it doesn't really hold up well for the government. And it really goes back to what everyone has always said about the government when it comes to these sort of topics. It more stamps the fact that this is the play that they would go to. Some people who looked at that as conspiracy thinking kind of see, okay, this is the playbook that they pull from. Okay.
Yeah. I just had to bring it out because it just seems so over the top, right? And I'm not sure where they're going with it. I'm not sure. I'm like, like I say, I think this is just him giving an opinion. And whatever you think of it, my opinion doesn't matter. I think it's ridiculous, but yeah, I think it's just him sitting at the table going, "Oh, what can I do? I've got to say something," right? Yeah.
I guess more comparative than to the congressperson there that came out and said, what did he say? Mothership, Iranian mothership off the coast. So maybe that same thought process.
Yeah, maybe they barbecue together on the weekends or something and sit around and brainstorm. But yeah, they got to do better than that.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad, and but it for us within ufology, it just shows kind of where they're at as far as this goes. And it's like when your back is up against the wall, like it feels like their back is definitely up against the wall. It just shows, okay, these are the things that they're going to come out with. Now it's up to us to counter those statements, though. Like, who's going to step up from our side to kind of counter those statements and disprove those? We have a lot of skeptics that come out and disprove UFO whistleblower statements immediately.
Sure.
So why can't we have someone that kind of discounts or vets these statements that are being made by authorities?
Yeah, for sure, and that makes perfect sense. I mean, even again, how ridiculous that statement is. You're right. There should be somebody coming up and going, like, yeah, you're not, you got to go. Or what the heck were you thinking? Right. And coming out and saying, hey, sorry, yeah, this was misconstrued, or come up with some sort of word salad that will excuse him. Right. But I'm not sure.
Reason being is there's definitely going to be, even if this was his own personal opinion, there's going to be a group of people that don't view it as that. They're going to look at this as official word from the government, from a government official, and then that fuels the skeptic conversation, because we know and skeptics don't do any vetting when it comes to information released from the government. They just take it at face value. So this will be the new talking point for skeptics.
100%, 100%. So, question for you: what do you think's coming up with this Anna Paulina Luna announcement?
I thought about it, and I didn't really want to jump on it so fast because it may not be UFO related at all. This may end up being something that has to do with the various other things that are happening in Washington, D.C., because there are a lot of announcements that could come out that would be something that I think would be important for the nation. And it could be a various myriad of topics. So I don't know if there's anything within that. Excuse me. I don't know if there's anything within her statement that leads me to believe that it's going to be about UFOs. And with that being said, I would say for the UFO community, don't raise your expectation levels too high on this, because you may fall flat on your face next week when you find out it's about something to do with the border or some other political thing that they're dealing with up there right now. So I don't know. What do you feel about it?
Well, I was just at the same boat as you. I was like, yeah, well, okay, I've got a big announcement, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. Okay, fine. So we could all speculate. But the thing is that Jared, I always hate saying this, Moskowitz, the out of Florida, he is like the little kid standing behind her back, going, "Oh, I can't tell you, but guess what? Yeah, oh, you're close." And it's like, what the heck? Everywhere you look, he's got these little 2-word or 3-word liners like, "Oh, you're getting warmer." That was one of his quotes today. It's like, so
he said, "I know, yeah,
I know." That was his retort or his reply to her statement yesterday, right? I'm not sure, but it's supposed to be huge, so I don't know what the heck's going on, and I'm not going to put too much stock into it. And Dave and I were talking about that last night. Just everybody pump the brakes and don't get yourself too excited.
Yeah, because as long as you underestimate what's going to happen, you may be pleasantly surprised at the statement, regardless if it's about UFOs or some other thing. Just don't go in with your expectations so high. And the problem is that lately, I think the community has done that with the hearing and some of the other things that have been so hyped up. The only thing I think that has lived up to that in my eyes so far has been the Jake Barber thing. That literally turned out, and we still haven't vetted the video yet, but it still is there as maybe one of the biggest things to come out lately. So hopefully this is something that even supersedes that, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Definitely. Let's hope.
With that being said, it looks like we have 10 seconds left as we are going into our final break of the night already, right here on After Hours Radio Show, filling in for Dave Scott right here. You guys don't go anywhere. We got about 30 minutes left. We'll be right back right after this. All right, we are clear. And yeah, the Moskowitz thing, that's like the only nugget or piece that I think kind of ties back to it. And then the way that he's coming across with those little statements, you know, it makes you feel like they're talking about UFOs without saying UFOs. So
yeah, for sure. And it just watching him, and it's been so funny because I mean, obviously watching him the last little while and stuff. But I mean, him and Paulina Luna were both, what was it, endorsers of the disclosure, the UAP Disclosure Act. So they were part of it. They've always kind of been, like, in the last little while, a team. But he reminds me of my little brother when we were kids, and you know, Christmas is coming up or your birthday was coming up, and I'd be like, man, I sure hope I get that Superman t-shirt for my birthday or whatever. Maybe. It's like, yeah, you just gave it away, you turd.
oh, that's excellent. That is true too. Now, I just thought about this. Here's a good counter, though, actually, is that being that Anna Paulina Luna and Moskowitz are so engaged and involved in the UFO subject and are the spokespeople for UFOs within the Congress and have asked some really, really great questions to whistleblowers and seem to really be taking this thing seriously and by the horns, then I would think that once people started speculating about what this announcement was and saying, hey, it's UFOs, I think integrity would say, okay, oh no, we don't want them to think it's that. Let's let them know immediately it's not UFOs, so as to not to let the community down. And so because they're not doing that, maybe that means that this is in relation to UFOs, just based off of that right there.
Yep. Good point. Good point. I have a funny feeling that it might have something to do with that, but I think it's going to fall under an umbrella. I think that there's going to be, my brain, possibly a committee that's been formed that's going to be part of, the UAP UFO thing is going to fall underneath it. Classified documents, for example, all fall under it. Disclosure in more than just one lane. I think just kind of my gut feeling is that this is going to be an umbrella, and it's going to cover and encompass more than just one topic.
Okay. I'll have to bring that point back up also after the break because for the radio, but yeah. I just, with the committee, okay, cool. It's cool.
Yeah.
But for the community, it's like, oh, another committee. Oh my gosh, what's the name of this committee? What are we calling this one? You know? And so I hope it isn't that because do you know the next day? Oh my gosh, it's gonna be nothing burger. What are they doing? XY is just gonna be a whole mess that we're gonna have to wade through. And I do. I really do. I want them to just play ball.
Yeah.
Why not? Like, why not? Okay, things are different after.
Yeah.
Okay. How different? Drastically? Are you a hero afterwards, or do you still hold your position? Maybe those are things to talk about, but just someone do it. Someone just pull the
It's
trigger.
not it's not like we don't know. Like, just confirm the fact that okay, you guys are right.
Yeah. Like, no, you guys aren't blind. You guys aren't having mass hysteria. You guys aren't seeing swamp gas, which is not visible. Just all those things. Just kind of give us that sanity to continue on with our lives. At least give us that.
Yeah, for sure.
We got about a minute left.
Okay.
We said, let's see. Let's see here. Galactic Disclosure Movement saying, Mr. Rob G, sometimes the whistleblowers do it to themselves by giving the time limit. That stuff will be released and time passes and nothing is released. Yeah, always. Then they say it all over again. Yeah, that's the cycle we're currently caught in. And fool me once, shame on you. Fool me once, shame on me. That saying, and that's kind of how it is. How many times are you going to let them move the football, the Lucy in the football? How many times are you going to let them do that? Before not taking them at face value, kind of just setting your expectations a lot lower.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
As we got 3 seconds left, here we go. All right, everybody, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show version of the regular show. Dave Scott is out, and I'm filling in tonight, and we are joined by UFO Tim James with the UFO Report, talking about some things that are going on in the world as far as UFOs go. If you missed any of this conversation, plus our guest from earlier, hop in the archives, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Catch up on what you missed as we get back into it. And Tim, we were kind of talking during the break about the other side of maybe what might be going on with this Anna Polina Luna thing, and the fact that because Anna Polina Luna, Jared Moskowitz are like, big figures in Congress when it comes to UFOs and the seriousness that they deal with the subject with. And the fact that, them making a statement like this and then people saying, oh, UFOs, and then having that expectation there that being that they hold these positions, that maybe they would kind of say, oh no, we need to squash this now and let them know it's not UFOs, as to not disappoint the community and kind of create this situation when it appears that they're pro disclosure on these issues. And you had an opinion on that during break. And what do you say about that?
Yeah, I was just thinking, first of all, I agree with you. I think that that's super important. And for the simple reason is that these people, excuse me, are back, and this is a fresh new administration. So everybody's getting their spots, and I don't think you want to start off by, as you say, misleading. And the credibility factor is, by being truthful and expressing themselves and letting people know that, no, hold on, everybody's getting crazy about this. We're not talking about this. This would bode well for them. And plus, it's good for us and for the UFO community and stuff like that. But I have a gut feeling that I do believe that something to do with UFOs, UAP, that sort of thing will or could possibly come out with this. Now, this is all speculation, obviously, but what I'm thinking is I think it's going to fall under an umbrella of, hopefully not like we were saying, but I think it might, my opinion, gut feeling, some sort of a committee that will not necessarily disclosure, but more transparency. But I think in sectioned areas, you may have more transparency in UFOs. You may have more transparency in classified documentation, more transparency in financial whatevers. I think that might be something to do with it. But like I say, that's just speculation. And that's just my gut. But like, who knows?
Yeah, and just to go even further with that, okay, so I, initially had concerns about it, the announcement being a committee.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking, and I'm like, okay, here's a scenario where committee might be okay for me. So
Right.
committee might be okay for me if the announcement is we are setting up this new committee. The president of the United States is directly involved and briefed by this committee. This committee has an office right next to the president and will brief daily the president on this information and at least formulating some sort of some sort of pathway to having the president directly involved in the conversations, therefore maybe having a moment where the president actually takes that information and then steps to a podium and speaks about that information. That's what I would like to see. That would be excellent. But if it's just another department or organization with a weird name on it, it's going to be lackluster.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I agree. I think that it'd be letting the air out of the ball completely. And again, you're fresh and you're new and whatever. I'm just saying it doesn't matter what department or what political party it is. You're new in this. If you want to do good for yourself, in my opinion, would be transparent, be honest, be straight up. And I mean, okay, so they can't tell you that, that they've got 20 aliens living in the basement of the Pentagon. I kind of get that, but yeah, just don't like my grandfather used to say, don't spoof the troops. Just tell it as it is and confirm what we know and let's just move forward and get on with it.
And in this dream world that I'm living in right now, where the president is directly involved with the conversation, I think if something like that were to take place, I think that would immediately put other countries in a position where they have to do the same thing, where it's like, oh my gosh, they're literally at the cusp where this announcement could happen tomorrow. So we probably need to get ahead of that, because I think as long as it stays so compartmentalized and so detached from what we view, even though they say the president doesn't control all of this, but visually is the head of the nation. In this case, the head of the world, if you're the number one nation in the world. So eyes would be on something like that. And just that visual of it being that close to a president would be groundbreaking. It would be momentous, and it may cause a wave that would be very helpful in having the government make a move on this.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a good point, because there was a lot of comments and a lot of people saying, well, it won't be UFO and UAP related because it doesn't include other countries. And as just me sitting back and working it through my brain, I'm like, well, yeah, but they aren't representing other countries. And first of all, United States, number one country in the world, most powerful, all that stuff. They're going to do what they want when they want to do it. And if they say, hey, here it all is, bam, and just open the cupboard doors and everything falls out, I'm sure that they're not consulting with France or Brazil or Canada on this stuff, right? They're just like, okay, guys, there it is. Now, what are you going to do? Like, yeah, you're right. Everybody will move after that. If that's the case, everybody will be like, oh man, okay, we better do our part in this, right? But they're not concerned about releasing that. And I'm sure making whatever Panama angry, right? That's not even in their line of sight. So not sure. We'll have to wait and see, my friend.
And I think you have to ask yourself this, because even with the current state hopefully with the current state being, it seems like the Congress is as high as you can go, even though we know they brief other agencies and departments. But visually, for us, it just seems like we get the whistleblower with the great information. They sit in front of Congress. Then Congress sits on that information or does whatever they do with it. But then where does that go above them? And we don't have a visual of that to know that it ever even goes past Congress. So it's like, maybe just, to kind of help out the conversation, I think that should be something that they should consider. Just at least, even if you're not situated in the White House with the president next door, just at least show the pathway that you have to the president to get this information there. Just show something that lets us know that there is a channel that this information is going consistently up that chain, and just let us know it's there, because I don't think we know of a way where that information gets there. It seems like it stops right there with the Congress, and that's it.
Well, and that's true. And I mean, speaking from, north of the United States, obviously out of Canada, that's a way that personally you nailed it. That's the way I feel. It's like, where does it go past that? And yeah, like, even I'd like to know as a Canadian citizen, because I'm interested, what is happening and where. Give us a visual. Throw up a chart and say, okay, this is how this works. Because amazingly enough, if you can see the direction or the alleged direction or whatever they're going to put out there for you, there's, lack of a better term, there's a comfort in it. It's like, okay, I see this happening, and there's you kind of get into it with the groove, and you understand it, and you feel that you understand. I know I would, and yeah, you nailed it on the head there, man.
Yeah, the blueprint, right? Let's call it the blueprint, and then go from here. So, did you have anything else for us here tonight, Tim, or was that it?
That's about it, man. Well, I like it when we get together because we kind of go off script and just bam, that's a fun conversation. So
that's right, and I love it. And I may call on you for this weekend because we have Drew Banky out.
Oh yeah, sure.
For the weekend. Okay, I'll reach out, Tim. It's been awesome as always. Thanks for coming in, Tim, and we will be talking soon.
You bet. Everybody have a good night. See you later.
All right. That was UFO Tim James with the UFO Report, being awesome as always, as I fill in for Dave Scott tonight on the After Hours radio show edition of the weekly Spaced Out radio show. And we're going to go ahead and get into some UFO and weird news of the week that kind of maybe touches on a little bit of what we talked about tonight with our guest. Shout out to Mike Forrest out there, talking awesome stuff about alien civilization or ancient civilizations and alien carvings and our connection to the whole thing. And we're going to have him on again soon, but let's go ahead and jump right on in to the news.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, UFO and weird news of the week. And this is a tip to the hat to our previous guest here tonight, Mike Forrest, and we talked about Mars and the potential of structures being found there, pyramids and things of that sort, and maybe what we'll find once we go back. So this is a story that I picked up. Mysterious square structure spotted on Mars, branded wild, has space fanatics completely baffled. It even attracted the attention of Elon Musk. The internet is once again going crazy with conspiracy theories after an image of a perfect square structure was found on the surface of Mars. So grab your tinfoil hats, as it's time to investigate further. One of our closest planetary neighbors, and likely the best contender to support human life in our solar system, after Earth, of course, Mars has long been a source of major fascination for humans. Major Hollywood blockbusters have seen humanity colonize it. H.G. Wells made it home to the hostile invaders, and Donald Trump has even promised to plant the U.S. flag on it. There truly is no place like Mars, which is why any news or conspiracy theories about the planet instantly go viral. The latest Mars news to capture our attention is the appearance of a mysterious square-like structure discovered by NASA. Classic Mars, images of gray, almost too perfect, an object began to do the rounds several days ago on social media, with Joe Rogan even weighing in with the comment, "This is effing wild." Naturally, the appearance of a structure which appears to be man-made would send the internet into overdrive, with believers quick to use the image as proof of long lost ancient civilizations. Meanwhile, the logical or non believers, depending on which side of the argument you fall on, will brush it off as an over exaggeration. Funny because we just did a show on skeptics, and you need to go watch that Social Dig, guys. What do we know about the Mars square structure? First of all, the structure is actually very real, having been captured by NASA's Mars Orbiter camera back in 2001. You can find a link to the fully zoomed out segment. The image was taken from a tiny slice of a crater on the planet, with the square itself being found at the top. So why are we all suddenly fascinated by the Mars square? Now, this isn't the first time we've been fascinated by a seemingly unnatural structure on the red planet, with internet sleuths claiming to have found everything from tunnels, faces, and even Bigfoot knocking about in recent years. This time, it's the fact that many people are in disbelief that a near perfect square shape could appear naturally and without the intervention of something or someone. But before you roll out the red carpet for aliens, it might be worth noting that straight lines aren't impossible in nature. In fact, various replies to the original thread pointed out that the natural wonders, such as the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, the Eye of Sahara, and Turkey's fairy chimneys, could appear man-made to an alien visitor. Regardless, the image has since come to the attention of resident Mars fanatic Elon Musk, who will no doubt be more happy to send SpaceX there if he gets the chance. He responded to Rogan's tweet, quote, "We should send astronauts to Mars to investigate." So, pretty awesome, right? Yeah, maybe structures being found there. I don't know. I think something will be found there once we get there. I just don't think I think it's probably a barren planet now. Maybe they find microbial life, but I think once they begin digging and start the archaeological process, yeah, I think they're going to, just as Mike Forrest deals with the archaeologists that are digging out these cities from under dirt, cities that have been covered completely over. So from the air, if you were looking down like we do on Mars with these satellites, you would not see anything but a surface. But if you dig, you're going to uncover some things, and I think we'd find a lot of that on Mars. So, talking Elon Musk, we're going to kind of roll into this next story, which has Elon Musk maybe in a bit of trouble coming soon here. Here we go. Elon Musk's Tesla Roadster might crash back into Earth after space launch and land him in a lot of trouble. Why would you launch a Tesla into space again? Remind me of that before we jump into the story. Here we go. A legal expert in all things space has explained how Elon Musk could land himself in real trouble if his Tesla Roadster, floating through space, crash lands back into Earth. And the possibility of it happening is not just one of theory. It could actually happen based off of trajectory. Musk and SpaceX launched Musk's personal Roadster into space back in February 2018 as part of a test flight. Strapped to the SpaceX rocket as a dummy payload, the South African billionaire wanted to use the silliest thing he could think of, with the test only having a 50% chance of being successful. Well, it worked. And to this day, the very real Tesla car remains floating around the planet, complete with the mannequin in the driver's seat, dressed in a SpaceX astronaut spacesuit, and a copy of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in the glove box. There is even a Hot Wheels version of the Roadster attached to the dashboard area. And while the car is currently closer to the sun than Earth after traveling at just a staggering 3,988 miles per hour, but last month, one amateur astronomer thought he saw what was an asteroid that seemed to be passing very close to Earth. The officials were on alert with the space rock expected to come within 150,000 miles of the planet, which is closer than the moon, with some fears around a collision with Earth. Very quickly, though, the Minor Planet Center very quickly went back on its estimates after revealing it was not an asteroid, but the very Tesla Roadster that Musk blasted off into space 7 years ago. There's a chance that the car could crash land back into Earth. It's low, though, currently standing at around 6%. But Dr. Thomas Cheney, the Vice Chancellor's Research Fellow in Law at the University of Northumbria and Newcastle upon Tyne, has said such an instance would land Musk in real hot water. As per Forbes, Cheney said, space is big, and the likelihood this causes issues beyond annoying people is minimal, but launching things into outer space should be done responsibly and for clear-cut, justifiable purposes, not on the whims of a billionaire. Quote, it should also have been a warning sign about what sort of person Mr. Musk is. Whether Musk and Tesla would ever be charged if it crash landed back on Earth is not clean cut, but Cheney says, with proof of fault essential. Cheney explained the only legal trouble Musk could get into if this Tesla hits another human-made object and causes damage. But even under the liability regime established by the Liability Convention and the Outer Space Treaty, it would need to be proven that the Tesla was at fault, which is something that we're yet to define in any useful way, and the injured party would need to be willing to go to the effort and expense of taking legal action against SpaceX and the U.S. government, as ultimately the U.S. government is liable under international law for any damage. For now, the Tesla Roadster continues to zoom through space with Bowie's Space Oddity playing on the car radio on repeat. No, we're not joking. So, with that being said, that's kind of crazy, right? So we go from structure on Mars potentially being there, Musk putting out a tweet saying we should send people to Mars. Musk has the keys to exploring space and getting to Mars. And then, however, just coincidentally, Musk is also the same person that mind-blowingly launches a Tesla out into space thinking it's a cool thing to do. And that object, that very Tesla, has the possibility of landing right back here on Earth at some point. And wouldn't it be just fitting if it landed right on his house? If that Tesla Roadster with the mannequin playing David Bowie, with Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in the glove box, just careening back to Earth, right into either SpaceX or Musk's house. I mean, it would be karma. It would be, what do they call that? Not instant karma, delayed karma, 7 years later karma. However, it's never a good idea, I think, to just put something that big up there and without the forethought of what would happen to it down the line, and could it crash back? Because seriously, it could injure some innocent person going about their daily business, and it's just not a cool thing to do. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and thank our guest for tonight, Mike Forrest, talking ancient civilizations. We're going to thank UFO Tim James coming in with the UFO Report, Steve Stockton with Tales Untold, Missing Person Mysteries. We're also going to thank my man that you hear right there, Ron Bumblefoothall, the one who rocks us out each and every weekend, each and every episode, teaching us to never say never. Because, yes, the phenomena is real, which means anything and everything is possible, even a Tesla float through space. So if you love the show tonight, make sure you go ahead and show your love by throwing your horns up. Also, want to thank listeners and viewers across the globe, when and wherever you may be listening from. Thanks for tuning your frequency to Spaced Out Radio, where we do what we do best. And what's that, you ask? We own the night. Remember, this episode is copyright SOR Media Ventures Limited, Spaced Out Radio. It has been a pleasure once again serving you as your host. I am Mr. Rob G. This is the After Hours Radio Show edition of Spaced Out Radio. And to all the space travelers out there, this is not a goodbye nor a farewell. However, as we go off air for the night, you can best believe that we will be back this weekend. Thanks for coming in, guys. Much love. Take care. See you next time. All right, guys. That was an awesome show. Very awesome show. Very awesome on the fly show as well. Thank you very much. Dave Scott should be back tomorrow. Should be feeling better and back to business as usual. I don't know who his guest is tomorrow, though. Let me check real quick. I want to say it's Keith Andrews, but let me make sure of that real quick here. Tomorrow's show is definitely none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Keith Andrews. So make sure you're right here. And then you got the weekend show coming up, the After Hours Radio Show, usual time. UFO Tim James coming in as the step-in guest for Drew Banky in hour 3. So it should be awesome. And we have Rex Bear, who we just fully confirmed his coming on here just today or yesterday. So we're 100% a go on that. And then we have Zason Saldusky, who will be here on Sunday talking accidental contact, UFOs, the implications of ET life. Rex Bear will be on here talking about the Leak Project, the phenomena, and what do we really know about reality, right? Should be an awesome conversation as we do what we do to move the needle, guys. You guys have been awesome tonight, too, with your questions. As always, definitely want to thank you guys for coming on in as I get ready to shut this thing down. You know how we do it on the weekends, and we're going to do it right here, right now. We want retribution. See you guys this weekend. You all take care.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.